know this has happened before in this series with Sean Bean, but why is Charles Dance still credited in the main title sequence, even though he appears for literally 2 seconds, playing a non-speaking, non-moving corpse? You know, I don't think I have once seen a girl or woman actively taking steps to prevent their clothes from becoming filthy from walking through mud, sewage, or entrails. I mean, think of the poor washerwoman who has to clean that shit.
You don't need to be afraid of my father.
Young Cersei, who is supposedly 15 years old here, somehow hasn't met her father yet.
Are you sure?
Yes.
We shouldn't go in.
Of course we should.
No, you definitely should not go into the literal cabin in the woods.
Get out. Get out!
Apparently, Osher and Rickon got lost on their way to the last hearth and found a wormhole that took them 25 years in the past. I mean, for all we know, Ned Stark could actually be Rickon. The jury's still out on whether that would work on a genetic level.
I've been promised to the prince. When will we marry?
The prince? Unless she means Prince Doran or Prince Oberyn, then Daddy's been talking shit. This flashback supposedly takes place only about 3 years before Robert's rebellion, at which point Rhaegar had already married Elia Martell and had 2 children.
Will the king and I have children?
No. The king will have 20 children. And you will have 3.
That doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't make sense, because I seem to recall that you and Robert did actually have a trueborn son, who you referred to as a black-haired beauty, who subsequently died of a fever when he was a couple months old or so. Googly Eye Funeral 4, a new hand. Also, I thought when a hand dies, their funeral is held in the Red Keep, like when Jon Arryn died. Jaime and Cersei are not having sex over their father's corpse.
What he built, it's ours.
Actually, no, it doesn't pass to Jaime because he's a sworn Kingsguard. It doesn't pass to Cersei because, well, she's a woman and legally a Baratheon. It doesn't belong to Tyrion because he's a convicted criminal guilty of regicide and now patricide. So, technically speaking, it belongs to Kevin Lannister, your uncle.
Now our father is dead. And that little monster is out there somewhere drawing breath.
I recall that you came to an agreement last season that you don't care about Tywin, and were more than happy to see his house and legacy burn as long as you two could keep doing the incest. Tyrion later uploaded a video to YouTube titled Mailing Myself to Pentos 2-week challenge epic prank gone wrong gone sexual.
I still don't see why I had to stay in this crate once we set sail.
Still don't see why Varys couldn't have just put Tyrion in a bigger, more roomy crate.
A group of people who saw Robert Baratheon for the disaster he was. We tried to do what was best for the realm by supporting a Targaryen restoration.
Wouldn't it have been easier just to ensure that Robert Baratheon's heirs were not a complete disaster? I mean, surely it would have been simpler to put Stannis or Renly on the throne, rather than attempting to supply a foreign army to Viserys and Daenerys and hoping that war kicks off at an opportune time in Westeros.
Are you Lord if you kill your father?
Yes, Tyrion of all people should know this. Statue made of solid metal, face planting onto a ramp made of twigs. That should be the end of the operation right there. I don't know what is the biggest sin here. That these whores are attempting to seduce a member of an army known for being entirely comprised of eunuchs, or the fact that the Unsullied actually seems somewhat interested in said whore's tits. This guy fantasizes about having his mother singing him to sleep, with said mother being half naked. In Game of Thrones, the time till death after having one's throat slit varies from instantaneous to a full minute or 2, depending on its convenience to the plot.
Conquerors always meet with resistance.
I didn't conquer them, their own people did.
Yeah, it's not like you snuck half your army through the city's sewer system with weapons to actually make their own people, capable of conquering Meereen. Not to mention, you did proclaim yourself queen the day after the capture of Meereen, and you then proceeded to systematically kill masters left, right and centre.
I have heard that more than one Unsullied has been known to visit Meereen's brothels. May I ask you why?
We still have tongues.
Get your shield up.
It's too heavy.
If it wasn't heavy, it wouldn't stop a sword. Now, get it up.
I've seen shields made of wood stop a sword in this show. Works as good as a metal shield, unless the sword is a flaming sword.
How many brothers can say that they've killed a White Walker and a Fen? I might be the first in history.
Sam should know that he is the first brother in history to kill a White Walker, mainly because the Night's Watch was founded after the White Walkers disappeared.
Shield up!
king wants a word.
I thought the king didn't give orders around here.
Are you a virgin?
No.
Good.
Why would that matter? You've never taken that into consideration when you've performed your other up sex experiments on other men. Also, what?
You know who rules at Winterfell now?
Who's Bolton?
The traitor who plunged a dagger in Robb Stark's heart.
Who was also a traitor for claiming half of your country as his own.
How much time do I have?
Nightfall. Sun drops fast this time of year. Hurry, Jon Snow.
This time of year? I thought the seasons, and by extension, the length of day and night, changes randomly in this world over the course of years in an unpredictable fashion.
My sons had swords in their hands from the time they could walk. This one?
Lord Arryn will never be a great warrior.
Great warrior? He swings a sword like a girl with palsy.
I don't claim to be a great swordsman myself, but I would think that lessons on how to hold the sword, how to swing it, and the basics on parrying would come before just giving him a sword and shield and letting him have at some other For those of you just tuning in, the series earns an extra 10 sins for every episode that features an appearance from Pod the Sex God, that being until his secrets are revealed.
Do you even know what a squire is?
An attendant to a knight?
I'm not a knight. That means you're not a squire.
Whoa, hold up there. Podrick earned his position of squire. It doesn't disappear if he isn't serving a knight. Not to mention Tyrion, Ned, and Bobby B all weren't knights, but all had squires. Also, this is pretty ironic coming from the woman who is wandering aimlessly around Westeros on the basis that she is honour bound to the words of a dead woman.
No, do you trust the carriage driver or the knights escorting us?
No. But I pay them well.
And you of all people should know that there is a certain house who can pay far more.
So where are we going? To a land where you trust everyone?
To a land so far from here, even Cersei Lannister can't get her hands on you.
Well, the only land that falls under that criteria is Essos. West is not to Essos.
But just being in his presence was enough to make it so clear just how formidable a person you were dealing with. What a force to be reckoned with.
Loras is too smart to not realise that Cersei is ignoring him and would prefer him to leave her alone.
Your Grace.
Cousin Lancel.
Who greets their cousin by prefacing their name with cousin?
Bloody fanatics. Religion has its place, of course, but at a certain point. They never would have come to the capital when Tywin was alive.
Okay, so Kevin clearly doesn't like the Sparrows, and that if Tywin was alive, they wouldn't be able to come anywhere near the capital. Now bear in mind that Kevin is not only going to be granted the title of Hand of the King, but is now the legal head of House Lannister, giving him the same amount of power that Tywin held.
There was the king. His bow hunt. His wine.
Ah yes, to quote the Seven-Pointed Star, or whatever the discount Bible is called, thou shalt not give one's king excessive amounts of alcoholic substances, while one's king is hunting the holy boar.
It looks like dawn. It doesn't. It does.
It definitely doesn't. Also, skip. Marjorie is attempting to flirt with a gay man. Oliver proceeds to walk out into the halls of the Red Keep completely naked.
Perhaps.
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 Perhaps. Was there a wine budget cut? Because it looks like Tyrion is drinking concentrate apple juice.
You have many admirable qualities. Self-pity is not one of them.
Apparently, self-pity is an admirable quality.
I killed my lover with my bare hands. I shot my own father with a crossbow.
Well, the former was attempting to kill you, and the latter had literally treated you as subhuman for your entire life.
What is it you want exactly?
Peace. Prosperity. A land where the powerful do not prey on the powerless.
And a Targaryen restoration will lead to that?
The powerful have always preyed on the powerless. That's how they became powerful in the first place.
Perhaps.
Perhaps.
The Seven Kingdoms need someone stronger than Tommen, but gentler than Stannis. A monarch who can intimidate the High Lords and inspire the people.
Varys is not stupid. The common folk really don't care who sits on the Iron Throne. They do care when wars are started, when the High Lords squabble over it. Something that is necessary if you want a Targaryen restoration. Also, how is Daenerys any gentler than Stannis? They both burn the people they don't like, and they're both more than happy to enforce their position with military power. If anything, Stannis is gentler than Daenerys and certainly more forgiving, especially when you consider that Stannis' most trusted advisor is a former criminal. Also, the thing about monarchies is just because the reigning monarch is perfect or terrible, that doesn't mean that all their successors will be the same. Who's to say that Tommen's children wouldn't be strong-willed and compassionate? Who's to say that Daenerys' children wouldn't be mentally insane and sadistic? Not to mention that Daenerys, the last Targaryen, has vowed to never have children anyway. Who would get the throne when she dies?
Politics is the art of compromise, Your Grace.
I'm not a politician. I'm a queen.
I believe in this system of government, they are one in the same.
Opening them would show the people of Yunkai and Meereen that you respect their traditions.
I do not respect the tradition of human cockfighting.
If you could
How many times must I say no before you understand?
Somehow, Daenerys has forgotten that men voluntarily fighting to the death permeates pretty much every culture in the world, including Westerosi culture, whereas she never heard of trial by combat.
You were sold into slavery, forced to fight to the death for the amusement of the masters, and you're defending the fighting pits.
Daenerys of all people should know that good things could come out of being sold into slavery. She herself was sold to a Dothraki warlord in exchange for an army for her brother. She then fell in love with the Dothraki warlord, and when he died, her 3 dragons were born. Daenerys keeps her dragons chained up in a pitch black room with no natural light for no other reason than for jump scares.
Easy!
I assume Viserion and Rhaegal have grown since you put them in captivity, so those collars you put on them must be getting tight. No wonder they're cranky.
You brought them together to save them, because none of them has survived the winter, not if they're north of the wall. Isn't their survival more important than your pride?
Pride? My pride. This isn't about that.
Then bend the knee and save your people.
Okay, now Mance is just being a dick. He wants his people to live safely south of the wall, and Stannis is more than happy to grant them that. But being a citizen of the Seven Kingdoms comes with some expectations. One of which is that every man capable of fighting is expected to go off to war when their lords and kings demand so. For some reason, Mance thinks he can get away with bringing hundreds of thousands of wildlings south of the wall, with them being granted all the benefits of a citizen of the realm, yet without living up to the expectations of such.
But if you can't understand why I want to enlist my people in a foreigner's war, there's no point explaining.
But it's not a foreigner's war. If you want your people to be south of the wall, then it's a war in your home bloody country, and in your home kingdom to boot. Why doesn't Jon just explain this to Mance? What? How would shooting an arrow in Mance's heart distract him from the pain of being burnt to death? Sure, he would die pretty quickly, but I very much doubt he would die in silence. Hang on, they pulled the Harpy statue off the Pyramid of Meereen last episode. So why is it still here in the title sequence?
Don't be afraid. He's announcing our arrival.
But why didn't they do that when Stannis arrived in Braavos last season?
I'm not afraid.
Someone who has to tell themselves that they are not afraid usually are afraid. Arya is fascinated with market stalls. Discount Venice. Those doors have door knockers.
Fala Morgulis.
Okay. So you basically just told the man who answered the door that he must die. Good things typically do not follow that statement.
Jack and Hagar gave me this.
No one here by that name.
I mean, yeah, you should know that. Jaqen literally told you that Jaqen is dead.
Please don't go, Jaqen.
Jaqen is dead.
Cersei. Walder Frey. The Mountain. Meryn Trant. Cersei.
Jesus Christ, what happened to Arya's list? There were 11 names on her list last time she recounted it. The only 2 names that removal is justified is Joffrey and the Hound. Yet for some reason, Tywin Lannister, who she has no way of knowing that has died, Ilyn Payne, the Red Woman, Beric Dondarrion and Thoros Amir have all of a sudden disappeared off her list for no reason. Also, is that coin really so intriguing that it warrants intense study for 24 hours? Okay, This is now the 4th time in this series that characters have randomly encountered each other in an inn, setting in motion major plot points.
Before we left, a maester gave you a raven scroll.
That was a maester? He looked like he was 14 years old.
What did he say about you? He said, your loyalty came free of charge. Someone appears to have paid quite a bit for it since then.
And what gives you that notion? The nice armor and sword? Brienne is a daughter of a lord, and believe it or not, lords are typically quite wealthy.
He was murdered by a shadow. A shadow with the face of Stannis Baratheon.
Brienne isn't stupid. She knows no one will buy that explanation. Why not just say it was an assassin bearing the flaming stag or something? Brienne didn't seem to get the memo from Ned Stark's corpse that honesty in all situations is not a good doctrine to live by.
I married her Aunt Lysa shortly before my beloved's untimely death. We're family now.
That doesn't really mean much, especially considering that everyone knows that you only married Lysa for political reasons. Instead of just cutting through the ropes that the horses are tied up with, Brienne decides to break the fence that the ropes are tied to, and it's not even the correct beam.
Stop!
Podrick is somehow able to control a horse after it has been likely spooked by large men attempting to stop it with swords. But he loses control when it is just galloping down a dirt path in a forest, something it has been doing for minutes. Also, Podrick conveniently loses control of the horse at a crossroads, with Brienne going one way and the horse going another. How did these two lose track of Brienne so quickly?
That's a good boy. Come on. Come on. No, stop!
Horse abandons you in the worst possible place cliché. Cersei's clearly seen the threatening message, yet she apparently decided to put the box back together before showing it to Jaime.
If I was a father to any of my children, they'd be stoned in the streets.
And what has your caution brought? Our eldest child murdered at his own wedding. Our only daughter shipped off to Dawn. Our baby boy set to marry that smirking whore from Highgarden.
Oh, come on. How can you blame Jaime for any of that? First of all, Tywin made the alliance with the Tyrells that put Joffrey and Tommen in their situations, and Tyrion was the one who shipped Myrcella off to Dawn, and throughout both of those events, Jaime was a POW, in a war that you started.
No sunflowers. I don't like yellow.
Girl who doesn't like yellow is wearing a yellow dress.
I've been all over the world, and if there's one thing I've learned, it's that meanness comes around. People like your sister, they always get what's coming to them, eventually.
Bronn clearly hasn't seen Game of Thrones.
Return from where?
As far south as south goes.
Antarctica?
The prince does not wish to be disturbed.
Remove yourself from my path, or I'll take that long axe and I'll shove it.
This bitch thinks she can make demands of big man Tyrone.
What will you do about his death?
I will bury him. I will mourn for him.
And then?
Nothing! Ilaria watched the whole f***ing duel. She saw everything that happened. There was no conspiracy. Oberyn got what was coming to him when he started playing with his food.
Let me send her to Cersei. One finger at a time.
I know Doran's a pacifist, but I mean really. He doesn't act on a death threat to his to-be daughter-in-law.
Someone who's forgotten fear has forgotten how to hide.
This bullshit. Also, Dario could have very easily killed that if he had gotten that stab a few inches higher. Also, this somehow broke down a bookcase and drywall without a run-up or anything.
We do not know what this man did or didn't do. Give him a trial at least. A fair trial.
A fair trial? One of the things that makes a trial fair is that the defendant is given, well, a defense. Yet who would defend him?
Your Grace, a word, please, I beg you.
About what?
About your father. About the Mad King.
The Mad King. You're here to remind me of my enemy's lies? Consider me reminded.
Your Grace, I served in his King's Guard. I was at his side from the first. Your enemies did not lie.
It takes this long for Daenerys to learn this.
And his efforts to stamp out dissent led to a rebellion that killed every Targaryen, Except 2.
3.
There's a bug.
There's a fly in my soup cliche.
Cersei has offered a lordship to the man who brings her your head.
She ought to offer her best part of her for the best part of me.
Okay, that's pretty funny, even by Tyrion standards.
During your brief tenure as Hand.
I didn't rule, I was a servant.
Still, a man of talent.
Managed to kill a lot of people.
Managed to kill a lot of people? I think Tyrion's time as Hand was probably the least bloody time in King's Landing.
Let's go for a walk.
No.
How many dwarves are there in the world?
I know he's paranoid that someone will recognize him, but they're in the middle of a field in the middle of nowhere. If he thinks someone will recognize Tyrion here, then why did he let him walk around on a balcony on a house in a crowded city?
Are you trying to deceive your queen?
Yep, they clearly are. That scar isn't even remotely accurate.
I'm merely advising my son until he comes of age and chooses a hand for himself.
Your Grace, I would be willing to serve provisionally as the King's Hand until he becomes
You're a
old
good
enough
man,
to
Lord
make...
Tyrell, but I don't imagine you'll have the time. In addition to being Master of Ships, the King has appointed you Master of Coin.
So Tommen has come of age to be able to appoint a new Master of Coin, but hasn't come of age to appoint a new Hand of the King?
I do not recognize your authority to dictate what is and is not my concern. You are the Queen Mother. Nothing more.
Kevin Lannister is apparently the only person in this room who understands basic inheritance and matrimony laws.
Did you know that the youngest Lord Commander in history, Osric Stark, was elected at the age of 10?
I know S.
Okay, goddammit, I'm gonna have to remove another sin for this.
They were covered with it. Their faces, their arms. They acted like animals. My father had to drag them out to the woods on a rope.
So how did Craster manage to tie them to the rope without getting infected?
I ordered Mance Rayder burnt at the stake. You prevented that order from being carried out.
Not really. He was tied to a stake and said stake was set on fire. That's all that Stannis was ordered to be done. Also, it's been at least 3 days since Mance's execution, and Stannis waits this long to confront Jon about it.
Lady of Bear Island, and a child of 10. I asked her to commit her house to my cause, that's her response.
Bear Island knows no king but the king in the north, whose name is Stark.
That amuses you.
You have to admit it's pretty funny that a 10-year-old sent such a bold political statement, but at the same time in her own handwriting, and even a hand-drawn sigil.
Kneel before me, lay your sword at my feet, pledge me your service, and you'll rise again as Jon Stark, Lord of Winterfell.
If the Northerners don't recognize Stannis as a king, then why would they accept him legitimizing Jon as a Stark?
Before we cast our tokens, for the 998th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
998th? Even though the Night's Watch is only 8,000 years old? That means the average life expectancy of a Lord Commander is only 8 years once they've been elected. Also, I've just realised the Night's Watch is literally the only democracy in the world.
Sir Dennis Mallister joined the Watch as a boy, and has served loyally longer than any other ranger. Through 10 winters he served.
10? That's not actually that long. In Season 1, Tyrion says that he himself has seen 10 winters, and he was only 32 back then. If Dennis Mallister joined the Watch as a boy, he should have seen about 20 winters by now.
What would have happened in that tent between those two old friends if Stannis' army hadn't come along?
Jon would have died. Perhaps Mance too, if Jon was quick enough.
Appears to be a tie, Master.
Yep, it appears to be, but I paused the video and actually checked, and Thorne has 28 votes, while Jon actually has 30, so he's already won at this point. I don't care what you say, that pigeon should have seen Arya coming and moved. I live in Britain, I know these things. And so, has Arya been living off raw pigeon for the past couple of days? That's a surefire way to get salmonella.
Quickly, go.
Faceless Man ex machina. Also, apparently you're not allowed to join the Faceless Men until you have killed at least 2 pigeons. Jaqen H'ghar was technically wearing blackface. That's actually pretty racist. Hang on, let me just refer to my list of good things that have come out of a teenage girl walking into a death cult's headquarters. Not only was Mossador somehow able to access the prisoner, but he was also allowed to kill the guy and make some crucifixion art with his corpse. I doubt that weapon could behead a man, especially considering the wielder is not on the horse at galloping speed. Also, apparently you're not allowed to join the Faceless Men until you have killed at least 2 pigeons. Jaqen H'ghar was technically wearing blackface. That's actually pretty racist. Hang on, let me just refer to my list of good things that have come out of a teenage girl walking into a death cult's headquarters. Not only was Mossador somehow able to access the prisoner, but he was also allowed to kill the guy and make some crucifixion art with his corpse. I doubt that weapon could behead a man, especially considering the wielder is not on the horse at galloping speed. Mussador whispers to himself just before he is killed, and the chanting of the crowd is silenced upon his death. This is pretty much a discount Ned Stark death scene. The rioters only start throwing rocks at Daenerys when she is under the cover of shields. I kind of feel bad for pointing this out, but Marine is located on the eastern side of Slaver's Bay, meaning the sun should be setting over the water. Still there, discount Fountain of Youth. I mean, it's clearly not magic that makes the statue able to cry, as the ability to waterbend would prove useful to a faceless man in ways other than decorating their death room. So either that's some really good plumbing for a medieval temple, or they've got a leak that happens to be above one of the statues.
I've been sweeping this floor for days.
Good.
I didn't come here to sweep floors.
No? Why come then?
That's sexist.
You said I could be your apprentice.
Did he really? The only thing he offered you is a trip to the House of Black and White. He said nothing about personally training you.
I want to serve.
A girl wants to serve herself. Here we serve the many-faced god.
Wow. How hypocritical of you. This is coming from the guy who actually disobeyed his god in Season 2, when Arya threatened to have him kill himself if he didn't help break her, Gendry and Hot Pie out of Harrenhal.
Which one's the many-faced god? I see the stranger. I see the drowned god. I see the wayward face.
Oh my, there are many different faces of gods in this room. I wonder, Arya, what kind of god or deity would have many different faces?
There is only one god. A girl knows his name.
Does she? Because you have referred to him as Death, the Red God, and the Many-Faced God now.
Where are they taking him?
Oh, come on. Arya's not still this naive. She spent over a year with the bloody ham for f***'s sake. She's probably seen more corpses than Jason Voorhees. Why does Cersei even care that the common folk adore Margaery but don't even acknowledge her? Isn't one of the Lannister mottos, "The lion doesn't concern itself with the opinions of the sheep"? Unnerving smile from Margaery just before sex scene.
Did I hurt you? No, you are lovely.
Either Margaery is lying to her king, or Tommen is giving Podrick a run for his money in the most naturally gifted lovemaker department.
Does Queen Marjorie sound strange to you?
So strange.
It shouldn't do. You were engaged to a man who called himself king for at least the better part of a year.
It's so wonderful to have her watching over you. A lioness guarding her cub.
Well, but I'm a man.
Also, you're a stag, not a lion.
I said darling. Surely 4 times is enough. Are you trying to set a new record?
4 times? Jesus f***ing Christ.
I wish we had some wine for you. It's a bit early in the day for us.
Mega oof.
Exhausted, to be honest, but what could I expect? He is half lion, half stag.
Okay, I think they're taking the whole house sigils as spirit animals too far now. Now I'm forced to imagine a lion with antlers f***ing a flower. Why are they hanging these flayed corpses in some secluded corner of the castle keep instead of off the battlements at the front gate or something? I mean, it's not as if the workers are the one not paying their taxes.
It's high time you married a suitable bride. And as it happens, I found the perfect girl to solidify our hold on the north.
Okay, so Roose is planning on having another child with his wife Walder, and according to him, that child will take inheritance rights over Ramsay. So why is he marrying Ramsay to Sansa if there is every possibility that Ramsay won't even inherit the lordship of House Bolton?
That's Moat Cailin.
Yes. Bit shabby, isn't it? You've been here before.
On our way down to King's Landing with my father and Arya. Where are you taking me?
Home.
Sansa was somehow able to notice that they were heading west while sat in a wheelhouse 2 episodes ago, yet is unable to recognize that they have turned north and travelled through the entirety of the Riverlands until they reach a major landmark.
Winterfell is your home.
Not anymore.
Always. You're a Stark. Dyeing your hair doesn't change that. You're Sansa Stark.
Oddly enough, dyeing her hair black just makes her look even more like a Stark.
You've been running all your life.
All her life? It's been less than a year since Joffrey died and Sansa fled the capital.
You loved your family. Avenge them.
And why would she need to marry into the Boltons in order to get revenge? Winterfell is pretty easy to sneak into, as shown in Season 1. Just pay a cutthroat a heavy purse of gold and revenge is sorted.
How do we get through there?
We don't.
and go around.
What? This is the King's Road, isn't it? So surely everyone would have free access to its use.
Next morning, one of the guards saw him passed out under a wagon with the ham bone still in his hand. They hanged him that afternoon.
Wow. So they didn't even give him the opportunity to pay its value back? He was a knight after all. He probably could afford to pay for a ham.
They tied the noose for me too, but Lord Tywin heard my family name was Payne, so he pardoned me.
Tywin Lannister apparently had time to involve himself with the sentencing of two random who stole a leg of ham.
And I'm going to show you how to ride properly.
Podrick has somehow been able to travel on horseback for literally thousands of miles without even knowing how to properly ride one.
When I was a girl, my father held a ball. I'm his only living child, so he wanted to make a good match for me.
Podrick, you've done half a job with her armour there.
Stannis is a man, not a shadow. And a man can be killed.
Yeah, let's ignore the fact that he follows a religion whose priests have been known to resurrect people.
Very well.
It appears that Jon had a mild stroke before sitting down.
You have many enemies in Castle Black. Have you considered sending Alistair Thorne elsewhere? Give him command of Eastwatch by the Sea.
I heard it was best to keep your enemies close.
Whoever said that didn't have many enemies.
I'm pretty sure Sun Tzu had more than a few enemies.
The shield that guards the realms of men. That's what you swore to be. Now, I'm not a learned man, but the best way to help the most people might not be sitting in a frozen castle at the edge of the world. It just might mean wading in the muck, getting your boots dirty, and doing what needs to be done.
And what needs to be done?
As long as the Boltons rule the North will suffer. Just one man's opinion.
What does Davos realistically expect Jon to do? He can't accept Stannis' offer, as he would violate the wear no crowns and win no glory part of the vow, and the Night's Watch itself is only comprised of a few hundred men, most of which aren't actual fighters, meaning that it would be pretty pointless for the Night's Watch to fight alongside Stannis. I know that faceless men are meant to be soulless killing machines, but why are the bedrooms modelled after the ones in Alcatraz?
You, who walk in here with a coin you never earned, whose value you do not respect.
Never earned? Jaqen didn't just hand those coins out to anyone, so clearly she did something of worth that warranted Jaqen giving her the thing.
No one. Ow!
Not only did the waif go from holding the cane directly down to instantly having it behind her ready to strike, but she strikes it against Arya's hip, but Arya proceeds to react as if she hit her in the shoulder.
You're about to find out.
Remember kids, if someone hits you with a stick a couple of times, it's perfectly acceptable to try and kill them.
Whose sword is that? It belongs to Arya Stark. Arya Stark's sword, Arya Stark's clothes, Arya Stark's stolen silver. A man wonders, how is it that no one came to be surrounded by Arya Stark's things?
What are you saying? That the faceless men share everything? Even such things as shoes and clothes that need to be designed to fit the wearer, and weapons that cater to specific fighting styles? Okay, just one question then. Where is the statue of Lenin? Oh, and also, where's the local gulag? That coin isn't even Arya's. Jaqen gave it to her, and Jaqen is no one, so why can't she keep it? Okay, so she doesn't want to throw away Needle because Jon gave it to her, yet she quite happily throws away the clothes that are the same clothes that her father gave to her to train with Syrio. Also, somehow, Arya managed to wear the same clothes for almost 4 years since she was an 11-year-old girl, without outgrowing them or tearing them up to the point that they fall apart. It's not like those loose rocks could easily be knocked off by the wind, making it so some random passing by could easily spot the very valuable sword and take it. What is Arya even sweeping there? Barely anyone passes through here, and it's an enclosed environment. How is there natural light in this room? There's several floors down underneath a building that resembles a crappy piece of modern architecture. 1.5 minutes of undressing and washing a corpse.
Lord Bolton.
Whoa, wait. Was Sansa CGI'd into that scene? That bow looked like it was in 12 frames per second.
Welcome home, Lady Stark. The North remembers.
Well, that saying is said in the context of a conflict between the North and the South. Yet the old lady says it's in the context of a conflict between two northern houses.
Mr. Raymond? He apologises for not being here. He's not feeling well.
Take good care of him.
Jon and Sam are somehow able to hold a normal volume conversation from 20 feet away in a room packed with dozens of men drinking and conversing.
First Builder Yarwick and I have decided to appoint a latrine captain to oversee this crucial task. Brian. Seems like a good job for a ginger.
That's Harris?
Lord Janis, I'm giving you Commander Greyguard.
Greyguard is a ruin.
I know Jon wants Janos out of the picture, but the Watch was struggling to man 3 castles with 1,000 men. When I counted, only 69 votes were cast during the choosing last episode, meaning that there's surely nowhere near enough men to man 4 castles, and Jon should care more about efficiently running the Watch than separating Thorn and Slint. This is now the 3rd time in this series that the Greyjoy theme has randomly started playing during a beheading. It does not start pouring with rain after the executee has been executed.
You have served us well, my son.
Thank you, Father.
The head of a continent-spanning religion is not interested in little boys.
Where can I find the High Sparrow?
Yeah, sure. Just point me up the pathway to the courtyard, but give no indication where in the crowded courtyard he is.
High Sparrow. Sounds ridiculous, doesn't it?
Discount Jesus. Instead of showing you the actual mouse being beheaded, we'll just splat some blood on the magnifying glass positioned more than a foot above it, because that makes sense.
Send a raven with this message to Littlefinger at the Eyrie or wherever he's slithering about. Make sure Littlefinger is clear on the meaning of the word immediately.
Haven't you already written the letter? What is Qyburn meant to add to it? Discount Frankenstein.
I'll never hurt her. You have my word.
Yes. People who have taken the word of a Bolton have gone far in this world.
Tyrion never consummated the marriage. By the law of the land, she is no man's wife. Inspect her if you must.
Sansa has done far too much running and riding for that to still be intact.
And you're prepared for the consequences. And the Lannisters here I've wed Sansa Stark to Ramsay.
The Lannisters don't even know that Littlefinger took Sansa. For all they know, Sansa is lying dead in a ditch somewhere.
Tywin is dead. He kept his house in power through sheer will. Without him, Jaime has one hand and no allies.
Good thing that Jaime isn't the head of House Lannister. By inheritance laws, his uncle, Kevan Lannister, is.
The last time the Lords of the Eyrie formed an alliance with the Lords of the North, they brought down the greatest dynasty this world has ever known.
I mean, they also formed an alliance with the Lords of the Riverlands and the Lords of the Stormlands.
I will not be of any use to Daenerys Targaryen if I lose my mind. I can't remember the last face I saw that wasn't yours.
It's a perfectly good face.
The Volantene Masters are very organized. Flies for dung shovelers, hammers for builders, tears for whores. Lest they forget.
What if there's a shortage of slaves in a given profession? How would you go about switching a slave's job from one to another? What's that guy doing? Holding a snake to scare passing people for shits and giggles? This Red Priestess is openly denouncing slavery in a city where slavery forms the core of its economy and productivity, and suggesting that Daenerys will soon invade it. Okay, it's not quite an in, but it's close enough to warrant 10 more sins. If I told you that we would get to see Peter Dinklage do 2 flying pisses off the edge of a high place in this series, would you have believed me?
I'm taking you to the Queen.
Oh goody! Now we have 2 subplots where the characters are playing the pronoun game. Still there. Guy looks straight at the camera as if the camera was the person approaching him, yet Jorah's punch comes in from the right and then he moves into frame from the right. Yes, it's not like leaving a man unconscious 2 feet from an ocean with waves and tides and shit would make him likely to die. Just give him a couple of coins and everything will be fine.
Is that Estamont?
Sir Jaime.
What's the point in going incognito on a merchant ship if you're just going to tell the captain of said ship who you are?
Why are we on a merchant ship? Why no Lannister sails?
This ship's sailing to Old Town. We'll get off earlier, not far from Sunspear.
That does not answer Bronn's question.
The Dornish are crazy. All they want to do is fight and can find.
That's a trait exclusive to the Dornish. I seem to recall that continent-spanning wars were started over which lord got to which girl.
We're not kidnapping a princess. We're rescuing my niece, bringing her back to her family.
Your niece?
Savage much?
It has to be me.
If I'm putting something like this together, a one-handed man who happens to be one of the most recognizable faces in Westeros is not...
It has to be me.
You could just tell him that the Queen basically ordered you to go.
He murdered my father. If I ever see him, I'll split him in two.
Jaime forgets that his last name isn't Clegane. Oh, and he also has one hand.
The King's expressed concern about his father-in-law's safety on this voyage. He's ordered Samarin to personally lead your escort.
Well, Samarin is pretty much the most useless Kingsguard, meaning that Tommen is being a prick, or Cersei somehow has the ability to order around Kingsguard and send them on months-long excursions without the King even knowing.
Please express Safe travels, Lord Tyrell.
Doesn't he need to say his goodbyes? Cancel his prior engagements? Pack?
I'll give your regards to the Titan of Braavos.
By putting a knife through his heart?
I have no doubt he will sign a decree arming the believers you felt worthy.
An army that defends the bodies and souls of the common people.
An army at all? Weren't you condemning violence and war just 30 seconds ago?
Wars teach people to obey the sword, not the gods.
What would you say if I told you of a great sinner in our very midst, shielded by gold and privilege?
You? Oh, come on, it was too easy. Also, wow, Cersei is stupid. Arming the equivalent of the Westboro Baptist Church with large enough force to control the entire city. That, according to her restrictions, or lack of, that she put in place, could very easily turn against her, just to get at one guy who she doesn't like. Discount probation. That's some pretty intense face painting, and it would heal over in a few weeks at most. Jesus fucking Christ. Did Littlefinger not know what door locks are? Also, I'm surprised that anyone goes here anymore. This is like the 4th time that random people have barged in and violently assaulted and or killed someone. What exactly is unholy about flowers?
You think you are? Justice.
Justice cliche.
Why is my brother in a cell?
I don't know. I didn't order.
Hang on, so not only was some extremist cult given the blessing to rule over King's Landing with an iron fist, but they were given the blessing without Tommen even having the slightest inkling about it? This is some ass backwards logic here. Have 30 sins.
You're the king. I'm sure if you speak to the High Sparrow, he'll release the poor boy.
Or Tommen could just make you speak to the High Sparrow. You are the one who gave him the power anyways.
His Holiness is praying. He will not be disturbed.
Isn't anyone allowed to enter a place of worship at any time? It doesn't sound very inclusive and for the people if the High Sparrow gets the entire Sept of Baelor to himself whenever he wants to pray.
Kill them. Here at the Sept.
In the Sept? You're quite clearly on the stairs of the Sept.
You're an abomination!
I know Tommen's scared of another riot in King's Landing, but he literally has an entire wall of soldiers in combat stance, protecting him from unarmed peasants.
I need to be with my family.
Hey, I'm your family.
Good.
Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
Bastard by some tavern.
Perhaps, but that wasn't Ned Stark's way.
Is Stannis suggesting that Jon isn't Ned's bastard? Even when his entire conquest of the North is riding on Jon taking up the Stark name based on his lineage?
I gave you nothing but weakness and deformity.
Even though Shireen was infected with grayscale after she was born by some kind of doll poisoned with the stuff given to Stannis by a merchant.
Lady Caulfield?
Why is Jon acting so exasperated? Sam was the one who had to write out all of the letters to random lesser houses across Westeros, and Jon merely has to sign them.
Not him. I know. I'm sorry, but we need men and supplies. And Roose Bolton's the Warden of the North.
Murdered my brother.
Okay, so 1 minute Jon is playing the aggressive neutralism card, swearing not to involve himself or the Night's Watch in anything but guarding the wall, yet the next minute he is refusing much needed men and supplies for the Watch on the basis of personal opinion and politics regarding the supplier.
We can't watch the wall with 50 men.
50 men? During the choosing in the second episode, there are a total of 69 votes. Plus the 3 candidates who couldn't vote, and not including brothers who abstained from voting or who stayed at Shadow Tower or Eastwatch by the Sea. That adds to a total of 72 members of the Night's Watch at the very least. That number realistically should have only dropped by 1, not 22, in the space of a month or so since the choosing. Has Melisandre never heard of knocking? Even Stannis has the decency to knock, and he's the bloody king.
Night's Watch take no part in the wars of the Seven Kingdoms.
There's only one war. Life against death.
And how would capturing Winterfell? Also, does Melisandre always have absolutely nothing under that robe, just so she can easily flash her tits to get her own way?
There's power in you.
There's power in you, cliche. Also, why is Jon acting like a prepubescent 11-year-old at the sight of tits? He had sex with Ygritte, likely many times, not to mention he lived in a castle where many girls swooned over him. He has seen plenty of tits in his time.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
I hate you and I wish you would die.
I know Castle Black is no place for a child.
Even though a good chunk of Night's Watch recruits are orphan boys.
When you were an infant, a Dornish trader landed on Dragonstone. His goods were junk except for one wooden doll. He'd even sewn a dress on it in the colours of our house. No doubt he'd heard of your birth and assumed new fathers were easy targets. I still remember how you smiled when I put that doll in your cradle. How you pressed it to your cheek. By the time we burnt the doll, it was too late.
So, how did Stannis not get infected with grayscale? I doubt he would have been wearing gloves while cradling his infant daughter.
I called in every maester on this side of the world. Every healer. Every apothecary. They stopped the disease and saved your life.
And yet grayscale apparently is still uncurable. If I was a maester or healer who had dedicated my life to helping others, I would make an effort to remember exactly what ultimately worked in curing Shireen. I know Roose Bolton holds some level of respect for the Starks, but I'm quite surprised he hasn't had the Stark statues smashed, or at the very least removed from the Winterfell crypt, especially considering that any traces of the Starks in their legacy weakens the Boltons' hold on the North. Okay, Robert's feather is a nice addition to this scene, but if that feather has been sat there for over 4 years completely untouched, then surely there would be dozens of other trinkets lying around on other statues that were left by Stark's past, and yet Sansa never picked up and studied any other trinkets.
How many tens of thousands had to die because Rhaegar chose your aunt?
How many tens of thousands would have died if Bobby B hadn't kicked the Mad King off the Iron Throne?
He has a larger army. He's the finest military commander in Westeros. A betting man would put his money on Stannis.
That was true when he attacked King's Landing in Season 2, and look how that turned out.
I expect I'll be a married woman by the time you return.
You already are a married woman. Oh, come on. You still have one functioning hand. Ever heard of sweep rowing? Also, rowboat scene does not include Gendry.
She want the same thing.
Let's go.
Okay, this is the second time that Jaime has simply changed the subject when Bronn starts pushing the boundaries regarding Jaime's love life, instead of just telling Bronn to shut his trap on the matter.
You're from King's Landing.
Axon gave me away. Flea bottom. Whelped and whipped.
Really? Flea Bottom? Why would two random twats from Flea Bottom be carrying such elegant weapons? At the very best, they'll think you stole them. At the very worst, they'll think that you're barefaced lying to them. This guy behind Bronn was charging at him in this shot, then in the next shot he has stopped moving and appears to have moved back an extra 10 feet or so. Wait, I thought Dorne's landscape was meant to be dominated by arid deserts and rocky mountains. Yet in this shot, which is clearly facing inland, the landscape appears to be covered in green fields and deciduous forests. Okay, this cut every nanosecond mentality is really starting to irk me. From now on, the show will earn 5 extra sins for every time this happens again. Gold Hand Ex Machina. But in all seriousness, with the way the hand has been crafted, that sword should have just simply deflected to either side and still hit Jaime. The chances of it going directly down the centre of the fingers and thumb are virtually non-existent. There's no way that glove is still intact.
First we need to bury these bodies.
Birds have to eat too.
Corpses raise questions, questions raise armies. We're not here to start a war.
Do you know how long it'll take us to dig all those holes?
You could just throw the bodies into the ocean. It would be far quicker, easier, and probably more effective than burying the bodies. Not to mention the whole reason that the Dornish soldiers found you in the first place was because of all the footprints that you were leaving in the sand. Scene lacks Chariots of Fire instrumental.
We don't need an army to start a war. Queen Cersei loves her children. And we have one of them.
You do realise that if you assassinate Marcella and Cersei declares war, then the Lannisters will be the ones marching on you, and Prince Doran's nature will likely see him suing for peace before rallying his armies to defend Dorne. No wonder it takes people so long to get anywhere on boats. This one is completely stationary. What the f is with this shoreline? I know a boat this small has to stick relatively close to the shore, but the land seems to curve near 360 degrees around them. It's almost as if this was on a lake and not an ocean to make filming easier.
It's all coming back to me. I was drunk through most of the small council meetings, but it's all coming back. You passed notes to Varys' little birds.
Even though by the time you were granted a seat on the small council, Jorah had already defected and stopped sending information to Varys. Jorah waits this long to do this.
Those who find victory in the fighting pits will never become kings, but their names will live on. It's the best chance they'll ever have.
Is that what you used to tell men before you set them to butchering each other for sport?
Why does it matter if men used to be forced into the fighting pits and were consoled with the promise that their name would live on? Hisdar is asking that free men should be able to fight if they so wish. It's no more barbaric when men volunteer to represent someone in a trial by combat in Westeros. You know, your home country that you're hoping to reconquer someday. Masked main character gets his helmet knocked off during a fight, so audience knows it's a main character cliche. After an extremely smart and cunning setup for a surprise attack, the Sons of the Harpy lose all coordination and fail to kill a single injured Unsullied surrounded by a dozen Sons of the Harpy. In this shot, there only seem to be 2 Sons of the Harpy fighting Grey Worm. Yeah, in the next shot, there are 4 of them, and in the shot after that, it goes back to 2 again. Despite lying in a sizable pool of his own blood, and with help clearly not set to arrive for at least a few minutes, Grey Worm survives this. Yep, still there.
I prefer your earlier suggestion. Round up the leaders of each of Meereen's great families and bring them to me.
So Varys, Daenerys is more gentle than Stannis? You know, scare tactics like this rarely work. All this is going to do is rally more former masters to the Sons of the Harpy's cause, if they know that Daenerys is willing to execute them in horrifying ways with little evidence just to put a point across.
Don't want to overfeed them.
I'm pretty sure carnivores that large would require more than half a man per day.
Forces rise against her from within and without. She refuses to leave until the freedom of the former slaves is secure. She sounds like quite a woman.
Hang on. Why and how has this information gotten to Castle Black? If Daenerys knows about Aemon at Castle Black, wouldn't she make some kind of effort to contact him directly? Or if this is the word of spies, or simply just word of mouth, then for what reason would that information travel to Castle Black?
And she's alone, under siege. No family to guide her or protect her.
Yes, because Viserys was such a good brother to her.
A Targaryen, alone in the world. It's a terrible thing.
And yet you, a Targaryen, voluntarily decided to join 2 celibate and lifelong orders with the prospect of living out the rest of your life in a castle at the end of the world, isolated from all other members of your family.
Half the men will hate me the moment I give the order.
Half the men hate you already, Lord Commander. Do it.
Do they really? If you're just citing the near equal votes for Sir Alistair and Jon during the choosing, it doesn't mean that everyone who voted for Sir Alistair loves Sir Alistair and hates Jon, and vice versa. Many probably just voted on the pretense that they like one more than the other, but are pretty indifferent either way. Also, do it.
Kill the boy, Jon Snow. Winter is almost upon us. Kill the boy. And let the man be born.
Is Maester Aemon implying that Jon is anything less than a fully grown man? The same Jon who went undercover for the good of the Watch, was one of 4 in 300 brothers to survive the Great Ranging, led the fight against the Wildlings during the Battle of Castle Black, and has had sex with a good-looking woman several times at the least.
And how many of your people can't fight? The women, the children, the old, the sick, what happens to them?
Wait, hold up there. I've seen plenty of women fighting amongst the ranks of the Wildlings. The Watch itself recruits orphan boys and sets about turning them into killers the day they arrive at the Wall. And both the Wildlings, Night's Watch, and many other armies and guilds have old men in their ranks.
Maybe you're not proud. Maybe you're just a coward.
Yes, because cowards are known for giving up their lives to preserve their dignity. Jesus, were they the only chains that Tormund was wearing? None around his ankles or anything. He could have very easily wielded a two-handed sword and done a shitload of damage if he so pleased. Just saying.
Most of them are at Hardhome.
How does Tormund know this? He's been in captivity in Castle Black ever since the battle last season. Unless there was some kind of contingency plan that everyone knew about, which I doubt that in a group like the Wildlings a contingency plan would even cross their mind, then the Wildling forces should have just fallen apart at the seams after Mansa's capture, and getting them all back together would be like herding cats in the dark.
We'll need ships.
You need ships. Then how did the Wildlings get from Castle Black to Hardhome in the first place if it wasn't just simply walking there? If they can walk there, then surely they can walk back.
Through our gates.
Men, women, and children will die by the thousands if we do nothing.
Let them die. We got our own to worry about.
Okay, so if everyone in Castle Black now believes about the re-emergence of White Walkers, and somehow haven't put two and two together themselves, then why doesn't Jon just explain to them if they let the Wildlings be killed and resurrected by the White Walkers, then they'll have a much bigger problem on their hands than when it comes to taking care of their own.
Less enemies for us.
Fewer.
Less is still perfectly fine English, and that's the second time I've pointed it out.
But they killed Gren. Yes. And they killed Pip. They killed 50 of our brothers.
Really? Ed of all people should know as well as anyone in the room that having wildlings south of the wall is best for all parties involved. Also, how many wildlings died during the Battle of Castle Black? Ed himself probably killed hundreds of wildlings from atop of the wall alone.
I know what it's like to lose the people you love. I know this is hard for you. But winter is coming. We know what's coming with it. We can't face it alone.
Okay, that's not a particularly fair comparison to make. I mean, if the Boltons were trapped north of the wall, do you see Jon letting them through with no qualms? Also, can't you just explain to Ollie that if the wildlings aren't brought south of the wall, then undead wildlings will come south of the wall and kill everyone he knows and loves? Seriously, the art of leading is good communication skills with those under you, and making sure that everyone sees the bigger picture to know what their goal is. And I'm sorry, the Starks are really shit at that.
Maybe Lady Sansa's better off here.
Better off with the Boltons.
I know there's not many other places she could have gone, but how can Brienne and Podrick be absolutely sure that Sansa is at Winterfell? Especially considering that Roose Bolton's a married man and Ramsay was only recently legitimized. She could have gone further north and married into the Karstarks or the Umbers for all they know.
I served Lady Catelyn. I serve her still. Who do you serve?
The realm, my lord.
I swear I keep seeing glimpses of Frodo and Ramsay. Is this where he ended up after Return of the King?
You still have friends in the north.
Okay, I can kinda believe that prior to the Boltons moving in, servants in Winter's Town would know servants in Winterfell, but everyone in Winterfell was killed in Season 2, meaning that any and all servants at Winterfell when the Boltons moved in would be from the Dreadfort, and should be loyal to House Bolton. At the very least, they shouldn't know random from Winter's Town.
If you're ever in trouble, light a candle in the highest window of the broken tower.
Yes, because it's not like it would go out instantly whenever a breeze kicks up. Somehow, the Bran crater is still there.
Who taught you? My mother.
Did she? I seem to recall that it was Septa Mordane who was the one who taught Sansa and Arya how to sew.
Down there, at the end.
What is it?
That would spoil the surprise.
It's at this moment that anyone with a sane mind would walk off very quickly in the opposite direction. How was Reek even sleeping in the first place with all the dogs barking? He should have been woken the moment Miranda opened the gate to the kennels and the dogs went berserk.
You mustn't keep secrets from me, Reek. Get on your knees. Give me your hand. I forgive you.
Ramsay forgives someone. Also, what the actual
May our happiness spread from Moat Cailin to the last hearth.
I hate to be that guy, but it would technically make more sense to say, may our happiness spread from Greywater Watch to Castle Black.
More wine, please.
Lancel Lannister does not walk out of the doorway.
A new person. Anyway. Aren't you Reek?
Yes, master.
That's his new name. Reek.
Why are you doing this?
More importantly, why is Roose allowing this to keep going, especially since he later yells at Ramsay for pulling the stunt? 1.5 minutes of Reek apology.
Reek here is the nearest thing to living kin that you have left.
Even though just 2 minutes ago you were saying that Reek isn't Theon Greyjoy anymore, so that wouldn't make him Sansa's kin anymore either. Also, Sansa does have living kin. Her cousin, Robin Arryn.
Reek! You will give away the bride.
I know that Tommen probably wouldn't be able to trek all the way up here for a wedding, but didn't Joffrey say that since Ned was dead, it was his responsibility as father of the realm to give away the bride?
We're going to have a baby.
I'm very happy for you.
From the way she's carrying, Maester Walken says it looks like a boy.
That's definitely not how it works. Hang on, everyone's been saying, on both sides mind you, that Stannis has the superior numbers, yet on the tactics board, the Baratheon forces are represented by 4 burning stags, and the Bolton forces are represented by 5 flayed men.
Sure of what?
That she's pregnant. I mean, how can you tell?
Well, Ramsay, you typically discover that a woman is pregnant if she misses her period, well before any visible swelling of the stomach.
I imagine you're familiar with the procedure.
Of course, but how did you find it?
Oh, come on. I know you can do better than that.
My position is quite clear. I'm your son. Until a better alternative comes along.
Isn't the whole point of legitimization to elevate a bastard to the same position as if he or she were trueborn? If that's so, then why do trueborn sons always trump a legitimized male bastard? Who makes these f***ing rules?
Did you, Grace?
How?
With a dagger made of dragon glass.
Dragon glass?
What the maesters call
You
obsidian.
know what it is. We have it in Dragonstone.
Sam apparently completely forgot about this conversation.
I've seen it, your Grace.
Seen what?
The army of the dead. And when they come,
We have to know how to fight them.
But in the meantime, I'm going to lead my sizable army that could prove useful in fighting the army of the dead in the wrong direction to fight a campaign that could very easily fall apart at any given moment.
I'll choose a dozen men to stay and guard the Queen and the Princess.
No need to come in with us.
It's a tough road ahead, your Grace. Won't they be safer?
Here? Half these watchmen are killers and rapists.
Even though Selyse and Shireen have been completely fine for the months they've been staying at Castle Black. It's not like they've been under constant escort, and even if they were, 12 men should be more than enough to guard 2 people. How the f*** were this many people able to fit into a castle the size of this? That's some clown car level shit. Also, on the subject of the geography of Castle Black, since when did this turn into this? Waking up in a panic after previously being knocked unconscious in a fight cliché.
I fear I never again see Missandei from the island of Nath.
Mate, I don't think she's going to let you see her after your misadventures in the river.
Sir Barristan counselled mercy when I took this city right up to the morning he died. Dario Naharis thinks I should kill the former masters and let the rest of the city fend for itself.
So you could take the advice of a seasoned knight who has been involved in the politics of ruling for pretty much his entire life, or you could take the advice of a guy whose only profession is killing people in creative ways.
What about Vala Morghulis?
I did not want to die a coward.
A coward? You were probably the most courageous of the executees there.
I will reopen the fighting pits. To free men only.
I know that I complained that Daenerys was being ignorant of Meereenese tradition, but if Daenerys reopens the fighting pits mere days after the death of one of her closest confidants, then it's just going to indicate to the Sons of the Harpy that they are doing the right thing to get what they want.
Thankfully, a suitor is already on his knees.
Daenerys just left her fiancé in a prison cell.
Sullen silences and an occasional punch in the face. The Mormont way.
Jorah, for some unfathomable reason, hasn't regagged Tyrion yet.
They held each other close, then turned their backs upon the end. The hills that split asunder, and the black that ate the skies. The flames that shot so high and hot that even dragons burned.
Discount Pompeii. Tyrion doesn't question why one of Daenerys' dragons are flying around so far away from Meereen and heading west, even further away from Meereen. He survives this. If the grayscale has already grown to that size mere hours after you're infected, then surely the time until it's spread around your body completely will be measured in a few weeks. Also, you should probably be careful about touching that. It could very easily infect your fingertips and you'd have 2 crops spreading simultaneously. And it's still there! Another 2 minutes of corpse cleaning! I'm so grateful, I had almost forgotten how boring this subplot is. Also, why is she being made to clean the arms and legs, when the only part of the body they actually use is the face?
What are they doing with the bodies?
Get back to work.
Don't you need to bring in the next corpse first?
I've been here for weeks. I'm not scrubbing one more corpse until you tell me why I'm doing it.
From the way that Ai is acting like a petulant child, I find it hard to believe that she's been contently scrubbing corpses for a day or two, let alone weeks.
Was that true? Or a lie?
What?
Did you believe every word I said?
Apparently, the concept of someone not speaking the truth is completely foreign to Arya.
Who are you?
Someone who is getting very sick of hearing that line.
After he was executed, I fled the capital. Had to kill a stable boy.
That's a lie. You killed the stable boy before Ned was executed.
I tried to find my mother and brother, but I never did. They were murdered by Walder Frey.
That's also kind of a lie. Roose Bolton was the guy who put the knife into the heart.
I'm not playing this stupid game anymore!
We never stop playing.
I've seen Saw too. Also, I honestly don't understand why Arya is still staying here. The Faceless Men are being very clear to her that in order to truly become no one and complete your training, one must give up their emotions, whims, and pretty much their entire identity. Yet the only reason that Arya is even seeking training from the Faceless Men is to serve her own goals. Arya Stark's goals. I mean, how hard is it for Arya to realise that she's not going to get very far with her list if she stays here?
You're an awful travelling companion, do you know that? Possibly the least charming man I've ever met.
Less charming than Joffrey?
How do they put it in the Watch? We shall never see his like again. Oh. You didn't know.
May I ask how you knew? Gren and Ed didn't arrive back to the wall until the episode after you were thrown into the dungeons for Joffrey's murder. And I doubt that Mormont's death would have come up in your infrequent conversations with Jaime.
She suffers every day of her life. I just want it to end.
Does this guy know that the Faceless Men cut the faces off the people that die within their walls? Is he completely fine with some random parading around Bravos and beyond wearing his dead daughter's face? There are plenty of methods of euthanizing her yourself.
I used to be like you. I was sick. I was dying.
You were? Well, necrophilia. Somehow, I did not hear the door opening, nor Jaqen walking several feet out of it. Excessive overuse of pillars. Also, how are you meant to access the faces that are higher than the first 2 or 3 rows? Which is most of them.
But she's ready to become someone else.
Really? All she's done since she's got here is clean floors and scrub corpses for a couple of weeks. Been beaten up a few times and recounted her life story to you. What about stealth training, the lessons in creative killing, the things that made you such a badass in Season 2?
Doesn't mean she's going to be a great queen.
No, it doesn't.
The Targaryens are famously insane. What if she conquers the world? Then what? 1,000 years of peace and prosperity?
Tyrion is literally the only person on this side of the world that seems to notice the various problems with Daenerys' rule should she conquer Westeros.
It's a slave ship.
How can you tell? What is different about this ship that gives it away as a slave ship?
Why are they anchored?
They probably came ashore.
Water.
There is no way that Tyrion and Jorah could have missed those 6 pirates, as they were literally facing them as they walked through the rock formation. Also, why would they be looking for water on a cliff face? Shouldn't they be looking for a stream or a pool, both of which will be closer to sea level?
The dwarf lives until we find a cock merchant.
Cock merchant.
Take me to Slaver's Bay. Put a sword in my hand. I'll prove my worth.
Your worth? The fact that they were headed to Volantis indicates that they were going there to sell slaves. Likely several slaves, as they don't plan on going anywhere else. Yet if they turn around and head towards Slaver's Bay, the only person they can sell there is you.
We both peddle fantasies, Brother Lancel. Mine just happened to be entertaining.
The Sparrows do not bash Littlefinger's head in after this sacrilegious statement.
And the Faith were armed on your orders.
The King's orders.
Is the king to blame for Sir Loris's perversion?
Even though Tommen told Marjorie that he had nothing to do with Loris's arrest or the arming of the Faith Militant.
We were fools to trust a turncloak.
Yeah, why would anyone trust a turncloak? It's not like your house still exists because you decided to betray your king at the last minute during Robert's rebellion.
Forgive me, Lord Baelish. You have a reputation as a moneylender and a brothel keeper, not a military man.
Even though Littlefinger was the one who formed the alliance between the Tyrells and the Baratheons of King's Landing that ultimately allowed them to defeat Stannis at the Blackwater, and is the reason that your head does not sit on a spike on the walls of the Red Keep. Hey, that doesn't look like Amy Richardson at all.
What is it?
Do you want to marry me? Because our family's arranged it.
Myrcella's been living in Dorne for over 3 years now, and she is only now asking this question.
A Lannister and a Martell.
Baratheon and a Martell. You'd think that they would quickly notice that the two guards following them have ran off to the left, especially considering that in this shot there is a Dornish foot soldier at the back of the merchants, directly in front of Jaime and Bronn. Yet in the next shot, where they actually split off from the main group, the third soldier is magically gone. Why are Jaime and Bronn sneaking through the Water Gardens as if they're not supposed to be there? If they've made it this far into the Water Gardens without being questioned, I would say they're in the clear as long as they keep their soldier attire on.
Promise, but we have to.
Nymeria Sand decides to pull Jaime away from Myrcella rather than just simply pulling Myrcella towards her and knifing her and getting it over with. Take her where? I thought your only goal was to kill her. Sure, managing to take her to a place where you can torture her or dismember her or whatever may have been better, but you're running out of options really quickly here. Were the Sand Snakes honestly expecting to escape the Water Gardens alive after killing Myrcella? Because it honestly didn't seem so with the whole For Oberyn thing. Nymeria could have still knifed Myrcella in the neck before Big Man Tyrone or any of the other Dornish guards could stop her. Why is Ilaria acting so surprised? Even if the Sand Snakes managed to kill Myrcella, the guards would have still found her and taken her prisoner if she had just stayed in the same spot. Since when were there soaring mountains surrounding King's Landing? When the Tourney of the Hand was going on in Season 1, it was clear that at least the immediate surroundings of King's Landing were flat. Yeah, in this shot, the land side of King's Landing shoots up immediately into steep mountains.
Oh, you can smell the from 5 miles away. Well, why have we stopped? Go on!
And the point of that was...
Put the pen down, dear. We both know you're not writing anything.
Ah, yes, the famously tart-tongued Queen of Thorns.
And the famous tart, Queen Cersei.
Olenna's had less than a minute of screen time this season, and she's already putting Cersei in her place.
I have no love for these fanatics. But what can a Queen Mother do?
Quite a lot, apparently, such as arming these fanatics without any kind of consent from the king.
The Lannister-Tyrell alliance brought peace to a war-torn country. Do you really want to see the Seven Kingdoms slide back into warfare?
Well, it's a perfectly legitimate reason to go to war, considering the War of the Five Kings and Robert's Rebellion were both started because one house was holding one or more members of another house hostage. Really? I know there's the whole a Lannister always pays their debts thing, but after witnessing the killing of gays in Littlefinger's brothel, the first thing that enters this guy's mind is, I'm going to help the Insano Queen incarcerate Loras Tyrell, rather than simply flee the capital with some gold that I can borrow off the profits of Littlefinger's brothel that I'm currently running in his stead.
The Faith is satisfied there is enough evidence to bring a formal trial.
Enough evidence? 2 people deny the claims, yet only a single person supports them? That's enough evidence? Oh, come on. What do you realistically expect him to do? He's surrounded by a dozen men with maces within striking distance of him, and with only 2 Kingsguard to defend him. It's not going to end well for anyone.
You're so beautiful. But you need to keep him happy. Ramsay gets bored easily. You don't want to end up like the others.
Even though Ramsay told Miranda that since she was his wife with an important name, she would be exempt from the keeping Ramsay entertained rule. Either way, Miranda and her ego definitely should not be encouraging that sort of entertaining behaviour.
And there was Violet. Oh, she had gorgeous blonde hair, but she got pregnant. And well, that was boring.
I doubt that a person like Ramsay would abstain from having sex with a pregnant girl in the interest of protecting the baby.
Yes?
Okay, I know that Ramsay's pretty f***ed up, but to what effect would making Theon wear the same clothes that Robb was wearing when he died accomplish? Sansa doesn't know what Robb was wearing when he died, and neither does Theon. All it's going to do is further diminish Roos's faith in Ramsay's ability to lead an entire kingdom.
Who comes before the old gods this night?
Is Roose Bolton qualified to officiate a wedding? Especially considering this wedding needs to be official. Is the smile really necessary? I feel a part of me die inside every time it happens.
My father said you're still a virgin.
Actually, that was Littlefinger, and you just lied to your wife on your wedding night.
Lying to your husband on his wedding night. That would be a bad way to start a marriage. Oh, no. You stay here, Reek. You watch.
Yes, Ramsay thinks he's completely broken Theon, but if you make him watch you rape a girl he grew up with, that could very easily be the thing that pushes him over the edge. And when your pants are around your ankles and your blood has gone from your head and into your prick, there's not much you can do against an angry Ironborn with a knife. I feel bad for sitting this, but how is Ramsay meant to make sure that Theon is watching if he's got his back to him? What do you know? It's still there. Why are you doing this out here in the courtyard for everyone to see? Why not just unchain him in the prison cell and quietly escort him out of Castle Black? I rest my case.
It's dragon glass. It's what I used to kill the White Walker. I hope you don't need them.
I do as well, because instead of just handing out a dagger to every member of the Watch to use, Jon decides to just keep them in a bag where he could easily lose all of them.
Egg. Egg laughed like that. One of the first things I remember.
Even though, according to the wiki, Aemon was only a year older than Aegon, and Aegon's infinite laugh was one of the first thing he can remember. Theon apparently is able to unlock a door from 3 feet away.
Theon, wait.
Key in the door opening and closing, Theon walking across the creaky floor, and Theon placing a metal tray onto a table are all sounds that Sansa can't hear over her crying, yet Theon closing the window shutters, yeah, she can hear that. Also, after closing the window shutter, Theon is about to leave the room, yet he leaves another window, which is closer to Sansa's bed mind you, wide open with snow blowing into the room. Somehow, the snow is blowing horizontally despite Theon being in the courtyard with high walls to shelter against such winds. Also, there is no way that fire in the background could stay burning in these conditions.
Yes, Reek?
Yes, funny cop-out, but if Theon really was going to light the candle, he would have asked Sansa if she had a way of actually lighting it. Also, why are Brienne and Podrick now staying in some makeshift hut? Even if they can't afford the inn-room, then I'm sure the random innkeeper who risked his life to relay information into Winterfell because of his loyalty to the Starks will make sure to keep a roof over the head of the 2 people who are actually going to rescue one of the said Starks.
Egg. I dreamed that I was old.
Cool story. Apparently, part of the funeral process in the Night's Watch is flattening the body into a 2B sprite before cremating it.
A dozen Lord Commanders came and went during his years of service.
Again, if you run the maths, that means the average life expectancy of a Lord Commander is less than 8 years from the day of their election, regardless of their age. What is so attractive about the position of Lord Commander again?
You're losing all your friends, darling.
Yeah, and how would Maester Aemon, a dying old man, be able to stop the other members of the Watch from doing what they want to Sam and Gilly?
One day I'll be Lord of Winterfell and Warden of the North. You will be my lady and Wardeness.
Wardeness? I don't recall Catelyn ever being Wardeness of the North when Ned was still alive, nor have I heard Lysa Arryn being called Wardeness of the East.
I've been naturalized by a royal decree from...
Tommen Baratheon? Another bastard.
He's still the king, and kings have the power to legitimize bastards.
Born the bastard of Winterfell, now the Lord Commander of the Night's Watch.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that you've just told Sansa where her last living king is living. It's not like Sansa has escaped political captivity before. Also, if the Boltons have heard about the election of Jon Snow, then they've obviously learnt that Locke's mission to wipe out the remaining Starks has failed, yet they haven't made any further attempts to have Jon killed after the fact.
We're running out of food. We can't open the supply line until the snow clears.
The supply line? To where? Castle Black that you're about to send Davos to beg for supplies? Or the boats that you've loaned to the Night's Watch?
Sell swords. Loyal to nothing but gold.
Well, the problem with sellswords taking their money and running is that no one will hire them in the future. If they were loyal to gold, then they would see the contract through to ensure they will be hired in the future.
But sometimes sacrifices must be made to ensure victory.
Probably should have pointed this out earlier, but what's stopping Stannis and Melisandre from making more vagina monsters, like the one used to kill Renly, and then assassinate Roose and Ramsay? They were holed up in Castle Black for the better part of a year. I mean, seriously, you'd think it would have crossed Stannis' mind.
You lost your mind.
Do you doubt me?
X to doubt.
Must be another way. Leeches or
There
something.
is only one way.
Yeah, leeches. That was the f***ing magic that supposedly killed Robb and Joffrey. Burning people alive has not once played into your bullshit magic.
I'd want a kiss. Come on, love. Give us a kiss.
Gilly's been living at Castle Black for what? Nearly 2 years now? And this is the first time she's being harassed? Really?
I killed a White Walker. I killed a Fen. I'll take my chances with you.
Considering they've got a screaming girl a few inches away from them that they're attempting to restrain, I doubt that either of these could hear Sam, who is speaking out to normal to below average volume. Direwolf Ex Machina, Season 5 edition. Also, who let Ghost out? Because I doubt that Thorne would allow him to roam the castle. Also, more importantly, why didn't Ghost go with Jon? How did Gilly manage to get Sam into a bed if Sam supposedly has no more friends in Castle Black?
What kind of man would I be if I ran away when I saw someone hurting you?
Theon Greyjoy? Okay, that's a joke for another time. Yes, a girl who was nearly sexually assaulted half an hour previously would definitely proceed to have consensual sex. Really? Active trading of slaves is happening literally a mile away from the walls of Meereen? How does Daenerys expect anyone to follow her if she can't even enforce her laws within spitting distance of her capital city?
He fought beside the Stag King Robert on the far side of the Narrow Sea. He was first through the breach during the Siege of Spike, slaughtering 50 men with his flaming sword. He killed the great Khal Drogo in single combat.
All of these people are pretty wealthy, and the history of Westeros is so well known that they write songs about it. So I find it hard to believe that these people would be hearing about these events for the first time, and therefore would know that pirate is exaggerating or just flat out lying. Also, why is this auction being done in the common tongue? Isn't the prevalent language in Essos Valyrian?
16, 20. So!
What? You're not going to try and push the price higher?
Wait! You have to buy me as well.
I thought Tyrion wasn't up for sale. What about the cock merchant?
How long before the king of Meereen comes to claim my pillow?
Don't be ridiculous. My marriage to his dad is political. I think he's smart enough to understand that.
Even if it's political, it still requires some pillow time.
I think the sons of the Harpy have stopped killing because their leader was made king.
Or they could have stopped killing just because they wanted the masters elevated back to a position of authority, and kings are well known for having such authority.
On the day of the great games, gather all the great masters and wise masters and worthy masters you can find, and slaughter them all.
Why is Dario in Daenerys' advisor circle again?
Sons of high lords, sons of fishermen. If you break his laws, you will be punished.
You know, I just realized something. I thought burning in the seven hells or whatever was the punishment given by the gods if one sinned in their life. By punishing people for their sins before they die, aren't the Sparrows technically usurping the judgment and justice of the gods?
The gods' laws must be applied to all equally.
Even though Olenna just said that pretty much everyone in King's Landing sins, so the law isn't being applied equally. In fact, chances are that some of the people who you were giving free food to in the name of the Seven were sinners themselves.
A lifetime of wealth and power has left you blind in one eye. You are the few. We are the many.
How, in any way, is that a viable response to Olenna's threat? We are the many? Okay. The many back in the Reach would probably be quite happy with House Tyrell if they didn't have to keep sending a cut of their food away to the capital.
And when the many stop fearing the few.
The many die. Lots of them. Until the rest of the many start fearing the few again.
I am the king! The queen is in prison and there is nothing I can do!
There's plenty of things he can do, seeing as he's the head of the largest army of Westeros, The only reason Tommen hasn't decided to clear out the Sparrows is because he didn't want to shed blood in the holy place. He's clearly quite pissed right now. He doesn't come across as someone who cares about that anymore.
I'll start a war if I have to.
You know as well as I do who the first casualty of that war would be.
Why would the Sparrows kill Marjorie? She hasn't faced trial, and aren't the Sparrows all about doing it by the book? Either way, if they hold Marjorie at knife point and start playing the games of the High Lords, then the Sparrows would quickly lose all respect from the common people, and their entire existence rides off the respect that the common people hold for them.
I'll do everything I can to win her freedom and her brothers. Your happiness is all I want in this world.
That's why I'm trying to have your beloved Marjorie killed. I mean, you'll be jumping for joy once you find out she's dead. Wink.
You look different when I left. You had more hair.
Wouldn't the correct statement be, you look different when you left? As the last time Marcelo could have seen Jaime is before he got into the fight with Ned Stark and fled the capsule. Which idiot made the decision to put the Sand Snakes all together in one cell?
I've seen quite a few women in all the Seven Kingdoms.
Name one more beautiful than I am.
Bronn fails to follow up with a your mother joke. So, did the Sand Snakes have their underwear confiscated? Or did they just not wear anything under their fighting gear?
My dagger was coated with a special ointment from Ashai. They call it the Long Farewell. It takes time to work. But if a single drop makes contact with the skin, death.
That sounds pretty useful. Why doesn't everyone use it? Even if it's expensive to produce, its use in Westeros should be more widespread than just a small group of Dornish vigilantes.
The only antidote.
That for some reason wasn't confiscated with the rest of your gear. She could have been keeping a mini lockpick or some acid to melt through the bars, for all the guards know.
I promise you, Lord Baelish, that our fates are joined. Together we murdered a king.
Jesus Christ, you're just gonna come out and say that? What about Qyburn's all-seeing, all-hearing birds?
I have a gift for you.
What kind of gift?
The same kind I gave Cersei. A handsome young man.
A handsome young man? The only one that comes to mind is Oliver. You know, the guy who helped incarcerate Loras, and by extension, Marjorie. Why aren't you sending them all out? What was the point in getting everyone suited up if you're only going to send a handful out to fight?
For generations, in the days leading up to the Great Games, it has been customary for our ruler to make the rounds of the lower pits, to pay the fighters there the honour of her presence.
I know I defended him regarding the importance of tradition, but I swear his dad starts every conversation with, it's tradition to do this, it's tradition to do that, it is tradition to eat bagels for breakfast every second Tuesday. Also, how is the tradition for the ruler to make the rounds in the lower pits, if there wasn't even a single ruler before Daenerys took over? This is making it blindingly obvious that these guys don't want to be here. Daenerys really isn't enforcing her slavery laws very well.
It is a tradition for the Queen to stay until the victor has emerged.
I've sacrificed more than enough for your traditions.
Okay, what have you sacrificed? Really? Your time? You've actually sacrificed more by choosing not to follow Myroni's traditions. Just ask Barristan Selmy. Too soon? See? Tyrion's even chained up. Did no one do a sweep of the area just to make sure that the new restrictions were actually being followed? Maud? Turnkey?
My name is Tyrion Lannister.
Why has Daenerys got a massive oh shit look on her face? The only one who could have told her firsthand about Tyrion is Sir Barristan, and I doubt he would have held a high opinion on Tyrion when he left Westeros in Season 1. And in the message that was sent to Meereen informing them of Joffrey's death, it made no mention on who the murderer was, nor was it important in any way for Daenerys to know. Cersei makes no objection to the fact she has been locked in a cell with Marjorie.
I've been told men often go mad in the black cells beneath the Red Keep.
You're not in the black cells beneath the Red Keep. You're somewhere in the Sept of Baelor, which for some reason has a dungeons underneath it.
Now, the people who built this place didn't inflict their vanity on those who came after them, the way Baelor did with that great gilded monstrosity up there.
I don't think Baelor did inflict his vanity on it. Sure, there's a statue of him nearby, but not in the Sept itself, and people only call it the Sept of Baelor because it was built by a king, and therefore more high profile and likely to be remembered.
What will we find when we strip away your finery.
It was at this moment that Cersei realized she f***ed up.
Now his soul is so light, he will float through the 7 heavens like a bird.
It's amazing what taking an arrow half an inch from the heart will do to a person. I should try this method myself sometime.
Look at my face. It's the last thing you'll see before you die.
Cersei's face is not the last thing she sees before she dies, and I'm sinning it because she will have full control over the last thing she sees before she dies. Right, I'm getting bored of this. Meereen appears 13 more times in the series title sequence so far, including this one, so I'm just gonna add 13 sins and be done with it.
If you are Tyrion Lannister, why shouldn't I kill you? To pay your family back for what it did to mine.
Why didn't you kill Jorah Mormont on the day you met him, to pay the Mormonts back for supporting the traitorous Starks?
If you'd rather return to the fighting pits, just say the word.
Is that a threat? Because by Daenerys' own laws, no one can be forced to fight in the fighting pits.
Most well-informed person I knew told me that this girl without wealth, lands, or armies had somehow acquired all 3 in a very short span of time, along with 3 dragons.
I don't know why Tyrion finds it so shocking that Daenerys managed to acquire wealth, lands, and power with 3 dragons. I mean, they are basically cheat codes for the Game of Thrones. Any old with 3 dragons can do a lot in this world.
Why should the people trust a queen who can't keep her promises?
Yeah, why should they? It's not like you vowed to end slavery in Slavers Bay, and since then, 2 of the 3 cities have fallen back into the hands of the slavers, and there is active slave trading going on within a mile of Meereen's walls. Oh wait.
He claims he would kill for you and die for you, and nothing I have witnessed gives me reason to doubt him.
Daenerys shouldn't need Tyrion to tell her this. Jorah killed Dothraki blood riders attempting to kill her during childbirth, and as Jorah is attempting to win her over, instead of seeking immediate medical attention for his grayscale, he is currently dying for her.
Did not trust that you would be wise enough to forgive him.
So I should kill him.
Right, I'm done. Yep, better keep checking the spread of the grayscale for no other reason than to remind the viewers that it's still a thing that is happening.
Confess.
Okay, so you're providing her with bread without the need for her to confess, yet she can only drink water if she confesses? Wouldn't it make more sense for it to be the other way around?
I meant it. My face will be the last thing you see before...
Wrong again. Discount generic horror movie.
When I was 8, I begged enough money to buy my first bucket of oysters. I sold that bucket and made enough money to buy 2 more. It took a while, but I finally saved enough to buy myself an oyster cart.
Jesus Christ, if you managed to double your profits on each bucket of oysters, then I can't imagine it taking it that long for you to get an oyster cart.
I usually see Lara, my first customer of the day, on her way home.
Hang on, I thought this was some faceless man bollocks. How can you have a regular customer if you're going undercover as a person who doesn't even exist?
Anna's very impressive. Very industrious. She will make a fine servant for the many-faced god.
Even though people in service of the many-faced god are meant to be literally mindless slaves who get sent to the gulag for wrongthink. That doesn't exactly inspire industrious behaviour.
Best in the city.
You wouldn't lie to an old man, would you?
Oh, don't worry. We've already established that Arya doesn't understand the concept of lying. Also, why is the Thin Man keeping all of his money stacked on the table, where any random thief could very easily scoop it up and run off with it?
What will they do?
Come on.
There's nothing without me. Please, you have to. Please, you don't understand.
Is the Thin Man the only insurance broker in Bravos? Surely this guy can just go to another travel insurance provider. Either way, sin.
You said you didn't know what I would see at the docks.
A man had no idea what a girl would see and what she would not.
Wait, what? So basically you're saying, there's so many in Bravos that I just sent Aya to some random dock. She's bound to find some filthy capitalist that would work as training assassination. What's the point of checking? There is literally nothing in that room. They're either in there or they've escaped.
The High Sparrow will be presenting a substantial case against you.
The charges?
Fornication, treason, incest, the murder of King Robert.
So how is Lancel Lannister allowed to walk free as the High Sparrow's right-hand man? I can kind of understand Oliver getting off scot-free with the whole buggery thing, as he can go along with the whole "he forced himself onto me" trick. Yet Lancel, as Robert Squire, was in no way being directly forced to drug Robert, and had every opportunity to sell Cersei out to Robert, with her plan on having him killed.
Your Grace, Grand Maester Pycelle has summoned your uncle Kevin back from Casterly Rock to serve as Hand of the King. He now presides over the small council.
Tell him I need to speak to him.
I implored him to visit you, but he would not.
Okay, so we've already established Kevin hates the Sparrows for what they did to his last surviving son. He now has full control of both the Lannister army and the Royal Baratheon army, and is Hand of the King. He's pretty much the most powerful person in Westeros at the moment, and since he doesn't care too much about Cersei, and definitely doesn't care about Marjorie and Loras, then I can see absolutely no reason as to why Kevin doesn't just call in the army and clear the Sparrows out of King's Landing. Also, since Cersei's been arrested, why hasn't Qyburn been kicked out of the Red Keep yet? He holds no official position there, and everyone on the small council hates him. The only reason he was able to stick around was because Cersei was there. Theon seems shocked to see Sansa in Sansa's room.
Imagine my shock.
If I could do what Ramsay did to you right here, right now, I would.
Becoming a true Bolton girl now, are we? Not to worry, I think flaying is one of the first lessons you receive as a Bolton.
Killed those boys.
They weren't those boys, they were Bran and Rickon. They were your brothers. You've known them since they were born.
They weren't, they were only...
Only what?
Only not his brothers. I mean, Sansa, you have to remember that Ned and Robert killed all of his brothers because of the things his father did, and then was whisked away from his home to live out the rest of his days with a family that killed his family. Sounds familiar, Sansa?
You didn't? Do you know where they went, Bran and Rickon?
Wow, Sansa. Wow. You're not even going to berate him on the fact that he murdered 2 orphans in cold blood? And he hasn't locked the door. Seriously, Sansa, what's stopping you from just walking out the castle? Even if the main gate is guarded, aren't there supposed to be a bunch of secret entrances and passageways that only the Starks knew about?
All we have to do is wait for them to freeze, starve, and mutiny.
I think you're being a bit optimistic with the whole mutiny thing. Sure, maybe the sellswords will, even though I've explained why sellswords abandoning someone who's paid them when the going gets tough is really bad for business. But as for the actual Baratheon troops, well, Stannis has brought them through hell and high water, so if any of them were going to mutiny, they would have done it literally years ago.
I don't need an army. I need 20 good men.
And thus begins the most unbelievable military campaign since a crop duster turned religious fanatic successfully destroyed a moon-sized space station.
Have you decided yet whether you're going to have me killed?
It's probably my safest option.
I can see why you would think so. It's what your father would have done.
Nah, her father wouldn't even evaluate the options presented and just go straight to the kill him in the most gruesome way possible option. Also, how is this your safest option? If you keep him alive, you could end up luring the Lannister army from Westeros all the way to Meereen. And if you do that, you can just decimate the largest army in Westeros before even going there.
My own sister married someone she loathed as well. Though not by choice, and certainly not for the greater good, God forbid.
What do you mean? After Robert became king, he became the dream husband of every girl in Westeros, including Cersei.
You've always hated him.
Hated him? I worshipped him. Every girl in the Seven Kingdoms dreamed of him, but he was mine by oath. And when I finally saw him on our wedding day in the Sept of Baelor, lean and fierce and black-bearded, it was the happiest moment of my life.
Yeah, sounds like she really loathed him.
For 20 years, the Spider oversaw the campaign to find and kill me.
Not really. All Robert ordered was for the spies to keep an eye on her and Viserys. Robert only ordered them to be killed after Jorah informed them of Daenerys becoming pregnant.
I suspect he's the main reason you weren't slaughtered in your crib.
Even though Jorah didn't meet the Targaryen siblings until Daenerys' and Drogo's wedding.
Except my brother.
The brother who killed my father.
That's the one.
Perhaps I will have you killed after all.
Who you just admitted was a terrible person who earned his reputation. Like 30 seconds ago.
When you get back to your home, who supports you?
The common people.
Let's be generous and assume that's going to happen.
Actually, let's not be generous and assume that's not going to happen, because it won't. Under the Mad King's rule, men, women and children were burnt alive for and giggles. Then when Robert came along, there was 17 whole years of peace and prosperity. Sure, a war did break out between the Baratheons, a war that only really affected the Riverlands and has since pretty much ended, but I still think most, if not all of the common people, have come to prefer Baratheon rule over Targaryen rule.
The Starks are gone as well. Our 2 terrible fathers saw to that. The remaining members of House Lannister will never back you, not ever. Stannis Baratheon won't back you either. His entire claim to the throne rests on the illegitimacy of yours. That leaves the Tyrells. Not impossible, not enough.
What about the Arryns? Or the Martells? Or the Freys? Or the Boltons? Or the Greyjoys? You missed out quite a few houses that could very easily come over to Daenerys' side.
It's a beautiful dream. Stopping the wheel. You're not the first person who's ever dreamt it.
I'm not going to stop the wheel. I'm going to break the wheel.
Okay, but that doesn't answer Tyrion's question. The Masters don't have an army, yet they pose a significant threat to the stability of your power in a single city. Now imagine if the Masters each had an army, and they were spread out all over an empire the size of a continent. It's simply impossible for one person to have direct control of a country that size, especially in a medieval setting. You need the support of the other houses, or they're just going to rebel against you. And as we'll see in Season 7, your dragons can be killed pretty easily if one has the right equipment. Okay, somehow, neither Tyrion nor Jorah told Daenerys how they ended up in the fighting pits, and how they were captured and sold into slavery. Seriously, is no one enforcing our anti-slavery laws to the point that this is still walking free?
Thirsty? Confess.
From what I can tell, at least 3 or 4 days have passed since Cersei was arrested, so if she hasn't drunk anything since she was thrown in jail, then she should be pretty much either dead or on the verge of death.
Who's there?
What's the point in having a knife if the entire Night's Watch knows that Sam is useless in combat? Surely, a much better deterrent would simply just have ghosts in the same room.
Sometimes, a man has to make hard choices. Choices that might look wrong to others, but you know are right in the long run.
Like I said, the key to convincing someone about things like this is to paint a vivid, unfiltered picture of what will happen if they don't save the wildlings. Jon and Sam being vague, saying things like, if we don't do this and the army of the dead would kill us, is simply not enough to bring everyone on board. Discount Dunkirk.
Load of bones.
Hey, that doesn't look like Edward Dogliani at all.
We're allies.
You fucking traitor.
Hang on. Did the Night's Watch and or Tormund send no prior word to Hardhome that they were coming to rescue them? I mean, this could have easily devolved into fighting, and no wildlings would have received rescue whatsoever. The Lord of Bones was wearing armor made of bones, right? And Tormund just broke through his armor with a blunt weapon with a head also made of bones. The axe head should have shattered just as quickly as the guy's armor did.
You built that wall to keep us out.
Wrong. They built the wall to keep the White Walkers out. Your ancestors were just unlucky enough to be on the wrong side of it when they did.
We're prepared to give you that new life.
If
you swear you'll join us when the real war begins.
And if you adhere to the basic requirements as a citizen of the realm, aka pay your tax to your liege lord, and if you're a healthy man, be prepared to go off to war if your liege lord commands so, unless you want to go back north of the wall after the war is over.
I put an arrow through his heart.
You know, it's this unfiltered honesty that got both Ned and Robb killed. You'd think Jon would have taken some notes by now.
But I'm asking you to think about your children now.
Think of the children cliché.
He's young, but he knows how to lead.
No, he doesn't.
I'll never trust a man in black.
That's racist.
As soon as you get on his ships, they're gonna slit your throats and dump your bodies to the bottom of the Shivering Sea.
Even though there are 1 or 2 dozen brothers of the Night's Watch at the very most, while they are planning on evacuating tens of thousands of wildlings. At no point in the night would all of them be asleep for the watchmen on board to try anything.
I want to go with you.
I need to get the old folks on the boats. I'm right behind you, I promise.
We interrupt our viewing of Game of Thrones to bring you Titanic. Is that bag of dragonglass the same bag that Mary Poppins uses? Because somehow the bag is still full after Ed handed out daggers to everyone. Dogs barking before big, death-causing shitstorm arrives cliché. Thousands of wildlings have suddenly fallen silent to the point that Jon can hear a few dogs barking hundreds of feet away. How is it that 300 men of the Watch were able to fight off the Walkers during the Battle of the Fist of the First Men, but several tens of thousands of wildlings couldn't? Why on earth would anyone do that? This hut, which functions as a gathering place for the community, in what is probably the northernmost settlement in the world, has a massive hole in the roof for some reason.
They're gonna let them pass the wall even if you're not there.
You have my word. I've given orders.
Don't think you're gonna be there to enforce those orders.
Why would you need to let them pass the wall? You're in ships. You can just sail straight past it and deboard them on the south side of Eastwatch. World War Z, Medieval Edition. Okay, I don't understand how the biology of whites work. When the Then guy smashed a White's head in, it appeared to kill it, yet this White has most of its brain missing, yet still functions as a living White. Religious imagery. Also, the Whites stop attacking John, Tormund, and the other elders for over half a minute to allow them to stare at the White Walkers. Hang on, this hut is behind the fence, so how are the Whites managing to get onto the roof of it so easily? Why aren't all of the other Whites taking the same route and just jumping down off the roof once they get over the fence? I must question how 1-1 managed to get in there in the first place. Did Raman Djawadi have a seizure on the lower end of the keyboard? Really? John was unarmed and stunned. The White Walker had the sharp end of the pike pointed directly at his chest. The White Walker has no excuse to not have just stabbed John in the chest right then and there. Once again, this is going in for wide swings, where quick stabbing maneuvers would make far more sense. Okay, this is getting ridiculous now. Please stop giving the editors Red Bull before they start working on the fight scenes. What the fuck? None of the people killed here have been resurrected yet, meaning that these children aren't from here, and therefore she wouldn't know them and shouldn't have any reservations about killing them. And even if she did know them, she shouldn't be smart enough to know that they are dead and there's no hope of bringing them back. Okay, someone really needs to explain to me how Whites work. From what I've seen, Whites can suffer the same injuries as the living, and suffer the physical issues it imposes, like loss of mobility if they break or lose their legs. But they won't actually die unless they are stabbed with a weapon made of Valyrian steel or dragonglass, or they have their heads smashed in or chopped off. Yet hundreds of Whites running off a cliff like that should result with most of them dying or having their legs shattered to the point where it would be difficult for them to pursue the living. 1-1 run. Show neglects to show us how a giant, wearing clothes that probably amount to the weight of a small car, managed to swim to the ships in freezing cold water. Hitler retreating from Stalingrad circa 1943. Also, I thought this woman was killed near the compound gate, not on the shore. Melisandre does not start masturbating to the burning tents. This bullshit.
A band of 20 men, maybe less.
20 good sins for 20 good men. Each.
20 men rode into our camp without a single guard sounding the alarm.
The Northerners know more about that land than we ever will.
Really? That's your lame-ass excuse? It's an open valley. There is nowhere for Ramsay's men to hide. Nor is there any secret passages that Stannis' army wouldn't have found instantly. Seriously, what the actual f***?
Forgive me, Your Grace. I never claimed to be an expert in military matters. But if we can't march forward, then we won't march back.
You could attack and capture the last hearth. I mean, you literally marched right past it on your way down here. You could then plunder their stock of food and resupply on lost military resources. You took boats, right? Why did you not only disembark the wildlings on the north side of the wall, but then march 150 miles west from the coast to enter the tunnel at Castle Black, rather than just taking them through the tunnel at Eastwatch? Or better still, just sail straight past Eastwatch and deboard them south of the wall.
Every one of them is alive because of you, and no one else.
Jesus Christ, that's a bit insulting to the brothers who gave their lives to ensure they made it onto the boats. Oh no, he's still pissed at me because I was being an absolute c***. Rather than trying to get Ollie to sympathise with my cause and see the bigger picture, I brushed away his legitimate reservations with my plan, just saying, I know this is hard for you.
You have a good heart, Jon Snow. It'll get us all killed.
Oh come on, the wildlings are fully armed and the Night's Watch are completely unprepared. They are more than capable of overwhelming Castle Black within a matter of minutes. If the wildlings were going to do anything, they would do it now.
Find some healthy horses and a few knights to guard you. I'm sending you back to Castle Black. Tell the Lord Commander his king commands him to send food, supplies, fresh horses. In return, when I take the throne, I'll make sure the Night's Watch has all the men it requires. You can guard all 19 castles on the wall if you so wishes.
But I thought that you had agreed that you would be the one leading the charge against the White Walkers.
He polished his shield for a week so that it was like a mirror. Then he crouched behind it and crept forward, hoping the dragon would only see its own reflection.
But the dragon saw a dumb man holding a mirrored shield.
So what was the guy's plan after that? Somehow do a somersault onto the dragon's neck and stab it before the dragon noticed? Definition of enough gold snakeskin.
Uncle?
What a lovely dress.
You don't like it?
Yes, when someone says, what a lovely dress, with no hint of sarcasm, it means they dislike it.
I've seen the bodies piled on the battlefields. I've seen the orphans starving in the cities.
I don't want to lead my people into that hell.
No, you want to break bread with the Lannisters.
A Lannister who was rooting for Oberyn to triumph over the mountain. Doran has not yeeted this bitch from the court and into a prison cell yet.
You have my word.
The word of a Kingslayer.
A Kingslayer who was rooting for your beloved Oberyn, may I add.
No wonder you can't stand. You have no spine.
That's ableist.
Tell me, Sir Jaime, in King's Landing, how do they punish a commoner who strikes a prince?
He's not a commoner. He's a knight. Why and how has Tyene put some kind of undergarment on since her show with Bronn? Pure fear in the face of Tyrone. Yes, I will wait until I'm right next to my assassination target before I move the poison vial from the cart to my belt pouch. Makes perfect sense. Cersei only assigned Sir Meryn to accompany Mace Tyrell, so why are 2 Lannister soldiers accompanying him instead of, I don't know, 2 Tyrell soldiers?
Well, vintners say this might be the best year for red grapes in half a century.
Even though grapes are typically harvested in the summer, and it's nearly winter. Jesus, how far have they walked? At the harbour you could see the isles that made up the footstands of the Titan. Yet here they appear to have walked through an entire district of the city. Why not deboard at the Iron Bank itself? Also, none of the guards nor Kingsguard have had their suspicions raised by a girl following them closely for the last 2 miles.
And give me 2 kisses in Salty Town.
Salty Town?
Thought that old would never stop singing. Wasn't bad though.
Yes it was. Although it was pretty funny. What the is this? The save for work section of the brothel?
Sell your fish somewhere else.
You think I'm some kind of filthy fishmonger? I sell only the finest oysters, clams and cockles. Because the brothel keeper made an exception to allow Arya to sell some oysters to 1 customer, she is now allowed full unrestricted access to the entire building.
Too old. Too old. Too old. Do you have what I want or not?
Of course.
Why don't you ask for a specific age or age range? Then you can either source a girl of that age or just kick him out for being a creep. Okay. F*** off. He can't recognize her. Especially considering that she's assumed dead and he's unlikely to keep her image fresh in his mind. Well...
Who let this girl in? Shoot! Shoot!
As someone who is about to sell a night with an underage girl to some perv in golden armour, I don't see why she would be so concerned with the well-being of a random street urchin selling what is basically Viagra.
You'll have a fresh one for me tomorrow.
Are you even going to be here tomorrow? I thought Mace Tyrell had already come to an agreement with the Iron Bank. Also, why is this woman just bending to every wish of Meryn Trant, even if they're both unethical and uneconomical? He's a glorified bodyguard to some an ocean away, and seeing as he's not guarding anyone, and hasn't been the entire time, he's probably not even supposed to be here. Doran was so sure that the Sand Snakes would go peacefully in the event that Ilaria decided not to surrender, that he even gave them their battle gear back.
You write like a 7-year-old.
The Maester kindly agreed to copy it over for me.
Why couldn't the Maester just scribe for him? It's not like Jaime's writing anything important or secretive, or he wouldn't let anyone near it. Or does the Maester enjoy attempting to decipher the scrawl of a man who is not only writing with his wrong hand, but is also dyslexic?
They disapproved of Oberyn and me where you are from. Here. No one blinked an eye.
So why do they still call Dornish bastards sand if children born outside of wedlock aren't frowned down upon in Dorne?
100 years ago, no one would have blinked an eye at you. If you'd been named Targaryen.
100 years ago? I thought Daenerys, Viserys and Rhaegar's mother was the Mad King's sister as well, and Daenerys is only in her early 20s. Also, why does Jaime make no attempt to deny his relationship with Cersei? It really does nothing to help the stability of the crown, and if the rumour spreads far enough, it won't take long for the commoners to put 2 and 2 together and realise Ned Stark was right and Joffrey, Myrcella and Tommen are all filthy incest bastards.
Brothers fought brothers. Dragons fought dragons. By the time it was over, thousands were dead.
A continent-spanning war with a death toll measured in thousands? Seems pretty tame as wars go.
If a man knows what he is and remains true to himself, the choice is no choice at all. He must fulfill his destiny and become who he is meant to be.
Ignoring how ridiculous the notion of burning his daughter is, from a practical standpoint, if Stannis hopes to re-establish a legitimate Baratheon monarchy, then you'll need an heir. And he and Shireen are the only 2 true-born Baratheons left. If he kills her, then what is his plan to continue his legacy should he retake the Iron Throne? Books. I have a duty to my daughter. If I am dead, seat my daughter on the Iron Throne or die in the attempt. There will be no burnings. Show. Please, Father! No, bearded Jesus. Holy shit, this is where Ciro Farrell has been this whole time. It's amazing to see so many people from Westeros have all ended up in Marine.
Has your experience ever involved any actual fighting? You, yourself, have you ever tried to kill another man who was trying to kill you?
Have you? Oh no, every man who's tried to kill you was killed by the guy you exiled because he didn't tell you the truth on something that hasn't mattered since season 1. So, that should end the fan theories. Surely.
You don't approve? There's always been more than enough death in the world for my taste. I can do without it in my leisure time.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's an unpleasant question. But what great thing has ever been accomplished without killing or cruelty?
Tyrion isn't condemning killing or cruelty as a whole. He's condemning it in the context of entertainment and leisure. A man as smart as Tyrion should know that nothing in this world changes significantly without death.
One day your great city will return to the dirt as well.
At your command?
If need be.
How many people will die to make this happen?
If it comes to that, they will have died for a good reason.
Those men think they're dying for a good reason.
Someone else's reason.
Torching a city to the ground, potentially killing hundreds of thousands in the process, just because Daenerys isn't getting away and changing the fundamental traditions of an ancient culture that she only learned existed a year or two ago, is a good reason. Also, what? Someone else's reason? Isn't the main reason that Daenerys agreed to reopen the fighting pits was on the condition that only free men, with their own reasons, were allowed to fight? After introducing the Marinese champion, the Dothraki warrior and the Braavosi swordmaster, the bearded Jesus failed to introduce the black guy with the spear and the Viking with the cleaver sword, and skipped straight to Jorah. Also, was the last fight a semi-final? If so, shouldn't the winner be in this match? Or was it some kind of undercard fight? Also, shouldn't all the sand still be covered in blood from the previous fight? Braavosi swordmaster takes time to clean his sword. Instead of checking to make sure no one attacks him from behind, this guy decides to go all Arya Stark with his killing. I'm sorry. That spear should have gone straight through Jorah's armor. Speaking of the spear, shouldn't it literally be dripping with blood, since it's been inside of 2 people within the last 60 seconds? Jorah was the only one who noticed this. Daenerys has stood up with her back to the open pit, where someone can very easily lob a spear at her, instead of crouching down to make her harder to hit. Careful, she could catch your grayscale. I thought the Unsullied were meant to be the best soldiers in the world. Granted, they were surrounded in the alley last time they fought these guys, but here they're in an open space, and were extremely wary of such an attack occurring. Yet it seems like just 2 Sons of the Harpies, who are basically ideological-driven terrorists, are enough to overwhelm an Unsullied soldier. Protect your queen! Sound clip reused within a minute of initially using it. And yes, Dario, the Unsullied definitely need to be told to protect the person they've sworn their lives to. Discount Geonosis. Eagles? Instead of attempting to move closer to Daenerys and her group, making it impossible for Drogon to firebomb them, the Sons of the Harpy instead all move to the outer perimeter of the arena, where Drogon can easily kill them all without fear of hurting Daenerys. The Sons of the Harpy wait this long to use throwing spears. Not a single Son of the Harpy lobs a spear at Daenerys during a dragon reunion. Yep, definitely Eagles.
The men. Many deserted before dawn.
How many?
Nearly half. All the sellswords with all the horses.
Part of me wonders how the sellswords hope to return to Essos, given that the Night's Watch is holding onto Stannis' ships, and won't give them back to anyone but Stannis. Yet another part of me wonders how on earth half the army sneaked out of this camp, taking with them all the horses, without any guards noticing or waking the other half.
Speak up. Can't be worse than mutiny.
No, it can't, because Stannis' actions last episode clearly show that the man cares more about sitting on the Iron Throne than his own family. Still a better love story than Twilight.
The Lady Melisandre was just seen riding out of camp.
Stannis suddenly remembered that he had been assigning the most utterly retarded of his men to be on guard duty.
He raised his hands, and they all stood up at once. Tens of thousands of them, the biggest army in the world.
They may be the biggest by sheer numbers, but it seems to take at least 3 or 4 wights to overwhelm the average living soldier in a one-on-one fight, meaning that an army made of wights needs to be several times larger than an army of living to go toe-to-toe with it.
The dragon glass? No one's ever getting that back now. It wouldn't have mattered anyway, not unless we had a mountain of it.
Samwell Tarly forgets that Stannis told him that Dragonstone was literally a mountain of dragon glass.
If you leave, who's left to give me advice I trust? Well, his head.
Jon can't trust the advice of a guy who has twice been his right-hand man in battle, and who he later makes acting Lord Commander.
So, you've just been beaten half to death. How did you? Very carefully.
Very carefully indeed. Is Gilly planning on holding the baby the whole way to White Harbour or whatever? One nasty pothole and he's going out of the cart. Breaking news! The Wolfswood has spread so much in the last 5 years that maesters predict by the 310th year after Aegon's conquest, Winterfell will be completely overgrown with firs and spruce. Why does Sansa have to pick the lock? Theon leaves it unlocked every single time. Instead of utilising her inside knowledge of Winterfell and making her way to the Broken Tower using quieter corridors, Sansa decides to walk through a crowded courtyard filled with dozens of Bolton men. Never mind, scratch that previous estimate. At the current rate, by the end of this f***ing episode, the whole north will resemble Chewbacca's backside. Also, Stannis' marching formation appears to have suddenly narrowed from a dozen or so men abreast to about 3 or 4 men abreast.
How do you know it's Stannis?
He's carrying his flaming heart banners.
There's no way you could have made out the sigil on the banners from that distance.
From the Blackwater. I'll never forget it.
Stannis never brought his banners ashore during the Battle of the Blackwater. Yes, instead of waiting in the wings a bit longer, as Sansa probably now has a good opportunity to light the candle, seeing as the castle's preparing for battle, I will instead seek my own revenge against a guy who's probably about to die anyway, instead of honouring my oath to protect the Stark girls. Once again, Stannis' marching formation has suddenly grown to about 100 men abreast. Stannis somehow wasn't killed instantly by the cavalry, and also survived long enough to wind up fighting in the forest. Unless the forest grew over the battlefield during the battle, which honestly wouldn't surprise me at this point. Why does every man in Westeros possess the ability to pull a knife out of his ass, then use it to instantly kill their adversaries?
Bolton has women fighting for him.
I think it would have been more appropriate if David Benioff and D.B. White walked up to finish Stannis off. Discount Syro Forel death. Even though Sansa left the Broken Tower just as the battle was beginning, she has only managed to walk 50 yards in the 20 or so minutes that the battle appeared to last. Also, despite the atmosphere of the castle not being any different to how it was before, Sansa is all of a sudden incredibly wary of walking past anyone and everyone.
Well, I suppose he doesn't need all of you. Just the parts he'll use to make his heir, until you've given him a boy or two and he's finished using them.
Actually, the whole point of marrying Ramsay to Sansa was to remove her Stark name. Roose clearly doesn't plan on Ramsay, and by extent his sons, on being his heir. The Greyjoys. Even with no balls, they still have enough testosterone to lob a fully grown woman over a fence with minimal effort. They survive this with no injuries whatsoever. The brothel allows Meryn Trant to physically and mentally scar not 1, but 3 girls daily. Even though Arya screamed like a little bitch every time the waif hit her with a cane, when Meryn does it, even to the point where he's breaking the f***ing stick, she acts like she's stoned. And no, she can't have trained herself to ignore pain, as when the wave starts beating her with sticks next season, she registers pain again. Also, unless the face that Arya is wearing is of a girl who was a child prostitute, why would the brothel send Arya in with Meryn in the first place? More magic knives! I think it's too late for that, Arya. In fact, the brothel keepers should be in here any second to restrain you until the Braavosi guard come. No? Okay.
You were the first person on my list, you know.
Wouldn't that be Cersei, for ordering the death of Sansa's direwolf? Or the Hound, for killing the butcher's boy?
I've gotten a few of the others.
One of the others? Hey, isn't that the girl we let in for some reason? Why is she sprinting out of here covered in blood? Come to think about it, I did hear some horrifying screams coming from that back room a minute ago. Nah, I'm sure it's fine.
The girl stole from the many-faced god. Now a debt is owed. Only death can pay for life.
But Arya killed him. That saying only applied in the context of Arya saving 3 lives. So by that logic, you need to create life? No! No, but that's not how the faces work. Unless they've got a fucking printing press for faces. How the fuck have they got Arya's face? Why do they need to remove faces from corpses if they can just fabricate anyone's face without them dying? Bronn should have spoken up here. He knows the nature of the long farewell firsthand. And knowing Cersei, she would have given him a fucking kingdom if he saved her daughter.
You want a good girl, but you need a bad pussy.
This season won an Emmy for its dialogue.
Have you ever known your mother to like anyone aside from her children?
She likes you.
And Qyburn. He could be giving you a run for your money in that department, Jamie.
I know. About you and Mother.
Why is that so shocking to Jamie? Everyone in fucking Westeros knows about Jamie and Cersei. Especially considering that he makes no attempt to deny the rumours whenever anyone brings it up.
I'm glad that you're my father.
You're glad that your entire claim to being a princess is based on a lie that has divided a continent and killed hundreds of thousands? Doran apparently didn't have his suspicions raised when the Sand Snakes opted to stay at the dock and watch Mycella's ship sail away. Despite there being several dozen sons of the Harpy and 4 unsullied left in the arena after Daenerys left, Tyrion, Jorah, Daario and Missandei all managed to escape. Also, Daenerys has somehow been able to source a full wardrobe of clothes for Tyrion since he arrived 3 episodes ago, yet no one can seem to source some fresh clothes for Jorah to replace the ones that he seems to have been wearing for the past year or so.
Sellsword from the fighting pits, a disgraced knight. Neither one of you is fit consort for a queen.
Nah, but it's not like Daenerys really had a problem with extramarital sex anyway.
Our queen would be dead if not for him.
And this is definitely not new information.
Pardon me?
Have you ever tracked animals in the wilderness?
Not precisely.
Yes, and if I remember, the Hill tribesmen of the Vale attempted to take it from you.
Can you fight?
Yes, this is something that Daario has seen first f***ing hand.
I suppose there's no point asking how you found me.
Well, it's hardly a mystery. Varys was going to Meereen anyway, with or without Tyrion.
If only I knew someone with a vast network of spies.
If only.
Vast network of little kids bribed with free candy.
Drogon, can you take me back to Meereen?
Is Daenerys actually trying to get some kind of response out of Drogon? Because I thought she needed to speak in some kind of dragon tongue in order for the dragons to do stuff. Taking off your wedding ring when you're approached by riders famed for their culture of pillaging and raping probably isn't the best idea. Somehow, 3 different groups of scouting Dothraki and the main Khalasar all managed to stumble upon Daenerys within 30 seconds of each other. Also, unless this is 3 Khalasars all converging at one point, for what reason did the Khal decide to split his forces into 3 separate groups, only to regroup again here? Discount sharks.
I lay with a man outside the bonds of marriage, I confess.
Name him.
Lancel Lannister.
Your cousin.
Last time I checked, there was nothing wrong with cousin f***ing in Westeros.
But they are bastards born of incest and adultery.
A lie. A lie from the lips of Stannis Baratheon. He wants the throne, but his brother's children stand in his way.
Well, it was actually from the lips of Ned Stark, and the High Sparrow should know this as Ned Stark was executed because of it right outside his current place of residence. 30-second haircut. I wish my barber was that fast. Also, you would need to use smaller razors in order to get the hair that short.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
What the f***? This scepter can say more than one word? Apparently, the citizens of King's Landing planned on throwing rotten food at Cersei, yet it was total silence until one absolute mad lad randomly started the cursing. It's quite unbelievable that throughout this entire walk from the Great Sept to the Red Keep, the scepter ends up with absolutely nothing on her, and the guards leading the charge get a very minimal amount of crap on them as well. What the f*** happened to Cersei's feet? I must have missed the part where someone threw Lego at her.
May I have the honor of presenting the newest member of the King's Guard?
Discount Darth Vader.
Who came to your aid? Stannis. Now he needs you.
We don't have enough men to make any difference.
The wildlings will make a difference.
Stannis didn't actually send Davos to ask Jon for more men. He asked for more food, supplies, and fresh horses. And now that the wildlings are farming the gift, the Night's Watch should have a massive surplus of those things.
If they're going to live in the Seven Kingdoms, safe behind our wall, they ought to fight for the damn place.
It's not their fight.
Davos is right. It is their fight. Although legally, they should be fighting for the Boltons. You know, I must ask why Stannis decided to march on Winterfell before even hearing back from Davos. If he sent him at the time he did, Stannis must have believed he could have stayed where he was until Davos got back. and the weather didn't even worsen, it improved. There was literally no reason for Stannis to march onto Winterfell when he did.
Lord Commander, it's one of the wildlings you brought back. Says he knows your Uncle Benjen. Says he's still alive.
Bullshit. Remember everyone, you can be stabbed 5 times in the area of multiple vital organs and be fine. But if you get stabbed in the heart or throat, well, that's the end of you. Fan theories. All of the f***ing fan theories. Also, where the f*** is Bran?